What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to FudgeMuppet. This is the Elder Scrolls podcast. I'm Scott, here with Michael and Drew, as always. And today we have a fun little special one. It actually might not be little, it might go on for a little bit, but it's basically been 52 weeks of straight FudgeMuppet podcasts. So basically a year, and we were going to do a little special year anniversary kind of thing. We put out a community post. We got a bunch of you guys' questions. We've sort of gone through all the most popular ones and tried to include those, and then also gone through some extras, but I don't know if we'll get through all of them because there were a lot, and there was also sort of overlap between a lot of them.
And it just so happens that there are 36 of them.
Yeah,
and that was an accident, right? That wasn't.
It was an accident. So
yeah,
for thematic purposes, it was meant to be, and
the 36 Lessons of Evec.
Yeah, and literally, let's get into it. The first question, FudgeMuppet fan says, "Can we get a long-ass video on the 36 Lessons of Evec? I wouldn't mind a podcast on it, but for such a dense topic, I think the video format would be better. Keep up the great work as always." And you'd be right, because a video format would do it justice.
I think I remember years ago you talking, Scott, about making that video, and I think you'd started writing it and you were a few lessons in, and you were just like tearing your hair out. Like, oh my God, there's just so much to talk about to try and unravel all of this. Doing it in a podcast would be insane because there's just so much to look into, so many words that mean so many different things that get into all this weird outer lore stuff. So it would be
so much of it is like referential to like real world like philosophies and stuff, and as well like it's a lot of work. That would be a magnum opus of sorts if it were to be done.
Well, who made the 36 lessons? Kirkbride, right?
Yeah.
Well, we could ask him.
Yeah, but then
that's always a possibility.
Yeah, but then
36-hour podcast.
But then it's not open for interpretation. You know what I mean? It's not treating the art as art. You're
no, but then we could just be like, "No, I'm going to hold you there, Michael. I think you're wrong on that one."
Yeah. Well, but yeah, I one day it will happen. We'll do a long ass video on it one day, but it will be a day. I feel like I need to like soak in some other things and do some other videos, create a larger thesis. But if you want something like it, the Vivek Explained video obviously goes over a lot of it and references it a lot, so you could delve into there in pieces if you'd like.
The next question comes from Amelia's T. If you three were Daedric princes, what would your spheres be, and what would your planes of oblivion be like / called? That's kind of weird question because, and this may be a bit of a boring answer, but I feel like just because so far we have lived the human experience and the mortal experience, if I were to make a Daedric realm, it would probably be, you know, quite similar to Earth, but a utopia in a way. You know what I mean? Like just
with just
the
statues of you everywhere in wrought in gold.
No, but like, you know, if I'm taking part in some realm, it would probably be, you know, similar to Earth in the sense of having all this beautiful scenery. Like, just imagine the most picturesque realm. I wouldn't want a realm that's all one color scheme or boring.
Daedric Prince of Boredom over here.
Every single
I just want
channel, every TV channel would be FudgeMuppet as well. There's no.
It's absolutely what you would want as well. Don't kid yourself.
No way, bro.
Listen.
Crazier.
Listen. Like Earth, but all super creative and more interesting, like scenery that's more epic. Everything good that you like about it, more alien and crazy, but then keeping all of the kind of like people, and like it would be a very like love and good times and like kind of that kind of realm. As much as I don't want to visit a realm that's like as much as I would want to visit a realm in an Elder Scrolls game that's nothing like this, and you know, like, oh, scary nightmare realm. That's not the realm I would make.
That's a good point.
If you're making a realm, it's gonna be like everything you love about with your mortal kind of like reference range, but enhanced massively. Take away all bad things that you don't like, all bad elements that you find unaesthetic, and just have the most picturesque, family, friends, love-oriented, creativity-centric realm.
Like the city of Hong Kong still there, or like.
No, well, if you want it to be, like,
so
I'm not saying
their own. Everyone brings their version.
I'm not.
You facilitate it.
When I say Earth, could I just clarify? I'm talking more like the biomes, not like the cities. I'm not saying I would want modern and there's Sydney and there's New York. That's not what I'm talking about at all.
But
Yeah, so
I'm
it just kind
saying-
of vaguely follows the rules.
you
of
know,
the planet.
in sci-fi worlds where they'll have a planet in say Star Wars, like Alderaan or something like that, but it's more modeled after what Earth is. You have water and you
Yeah.
have big verdant green like mountains and hills, and if anything, you know those things haven't really used Instagram that much recently, but there's this whole trend of landscapes that are actually fake. And sometimes you see people going, whoa, where's that? But like, I don't know. You should be able to tell it's pretty fake. But what they do is they get something that is kind of plausible. And then they just like ramp that up times 100 to be this super unrealistic, almost like a fantasy realm.
So what would
That's
your
what a fantasy
sphere be?
realm is, right? That's the thing. The sphere, if you had to link concepts together, it would be those kind of mundane sounding things like love, bonds, creativity's
Bonds?
fun. You wouldn't want to...
But like friendship bonds. Yeah.
like Debella realm essentially, a Debella / Mara realm that has kind of like a lot of art and aesthetic appeal to it. I wouldn't want to when I say Earth, and I can see why Scott you started laughing. I don't actually mean like
I
just have the
totally-
word I
Because
would
when you
say.
said because when you said
You
Earth,
totally
you're
get
like
what I
Earth,
mean,
but it's just
but-
like as much as like Tamriel is like Earth looking like I
Yeah,
wouldn't say,
but when we're talking about Daedric realms, their realms all look like Fire Realm.
I still
like,
feel like I'd go for something
Ash
crazier
Pit.
and try and want to do something crazier, but make it pleasant. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, imagine,
Like a good LSD trip or something.
yeah, or something like, just like
Not that I know,
necessarily LSD with colors or anything, but like it could just be like, I don't know, like it's like imagine even if for starters, like gravity was like have you seen like John Carter of Mars or something, and you know how there's less gravity, you just do these big leaps and bounds, and you're not going to fall and like crack your like legs and stuff, and there could just be like
that'd be cool. Like when I say
petals
Utopia
floating up
2,
from the ground everywhere, and you're swimming through petals in the sky and stuff, and there's like rivers that float through the sky like this, and you know what I mean.
But this is
like,
kind of my point in the sense of these are all earthy sounding things, rivers, petal flowers, and like
yeah, but it's
I'm not
done in a
saying
way
physics
that's
has to
like
be the same.
Daedric, not like mortal. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
people don't die in my realm. It's just like and it never ends.
but you're a
It just
Daedric
goes on
prince, so I guess
forever.
you'd have to like.
So what if people like had a fight to the death and just
You
never?
can't.
Yeah. So would they just suffer it endlessly?
I'd want
pain?
them. I'd want people to
Maybe
be
you
able to
don't feel
fight to the
pain.
death, and then just
If they
And then they
choose
just,
to.
spawn
How
back
about
up
it's like
out of the ground.
how about it's like Halo, where it's like you can, Borderlands, I should say, you can choose to fight an ally to the death, but like the default mode is that no damage is turned on. You can choose to turn it off.
No, fair cool. Fair cool.
But like, yeah, when I say Earth, I don't mean like the same society. Like this is the legal system, and there are courts and judges. And that sounds boring as. And here comes the police. No, none of that.
Yeah.
Just aesthetically, the nature.
just
the
an
nature
Instagram
element.
reel made into a realm.
What you know about rolling down the deep.
I was
It's the
trying to
theme song on repeat in the realm.
I was trying to be realistic with my one. Like, what do I actually like to do? But then, what's different about me that would kind of impede
Yours
that?
would just be a big farm. What was this farm show you were shilling after?
No,
the last
dude, farming is
podcast?
cool. I was just watching a
What
TV
was
show
it?
about farming. It's called Clarkson's Farm. Anyone who hasn't watched it, go and watch it. It's good. Farming is interesting, and
Clarkson's
England is
farm
beautiful.
realm.
But no, I was thinking like Sanguine is probably up there with my favorite princes. So I feel like I'd be like Sanguine, but without any of the charisma. Like him, but socially awkward. And I'd have like the myriad realms of revelry, but not too much revelry, not too loud. Just a little bit of fun, but then I get socially awkward and you got to leave now. That kind
Yours
of thing.
is just a big pub realm with unlimited pool table use.
Exactly. Just beer and pool tables. But then when I get like socially exhausted, I can make everyone leave instantly. And then no hangovers either.
But so like, what's the sphere? I guess because I feel like in actually answering like what would your plane of oblivion be called or like actually look like, it can be so like, you know, there's
like
so
the
many
best way-
options, and like
the best
things
way
that-
to answer the sphere question is to say each other's, because I feel like we know each other better than describing yourself. Like what sums up each of us.
Oh, but then it's not what would you choose, is it?
I feel like I don't know.
Like you are making jokes like, haha, socially awkward, but you wouldn't choose that if you're like, oh, you can be a Daedric prince.
Honestly,
you
if
would
I
be
were-
like, I'm going to be the Daedric prince of being socially awkward.
No,
you
but
wouldn't.
specifically just like
Come on.
having a laugh having fun, playing some pool. Not doesn't necessarily have to be pool. Just chilling out.
Worst Daedric Realms. Scott, you thought mine was bad.
Just
How about that?
yeah.
Come on, now go tell us about your LSD trip and surfing on a flower petal down a river or something.
I don't know. I would just like it to be like a fever dream. Like I wouldn't want it to necessarily just be like.
But with everyone you know and care
reality.
about, right?
Yeah, but like that can be a relatively small pool of people. You know, it's not like.
No, I'm saying that it's included. Like I'm saying, like It wouldn't be this realm that's like very empty.
But like I'd be.
I suppose what I'm saying. Are there lots of people?
But
Are there societies in your.
But
realm?
I am a Daedric prince too, so
Correct.
everyone around me, I guess, would be like lesser Daedra or something. Or,
Would you be
to some
humanoid,
degree.
like in your manifestation, or would you be something?
Just
completely
change. I would want the most fluidity possible, which is when I say Earth as well. If you think about it, it's a high variety looking place. Like most realms are one, and obviously it's because of game development, but a lot of them are very like skinned to one theme, which is why I like the idea, if anything, of Sanguine having multiple pocket realms. That's probably what I would do in retrospect. In retrospect, I would probably have lots of pocket realms where I could just do whatever I want.
This is not a Sheogorath, not like the Shivering Isles, because it's like so like rooted in the Mania dimension. But I would really enjoy one half of my realm be like raining, so like that beautiful sort of like cold rainy day, and the other just be pure crystal clear like blue skies, sunny summer. Because just a pet peeve of me, like the weather recently here in Sydney has been exactly like this. I hate on and off rain. I hate seeing sun with wet ground. I hate it so much. I don't know why. It's just my thing. But I love when it's raining. I really want it to pour and rain, and like that sort of feeling when you're sitting there like cooped up and like looking out kind of thing, and it's raining.
Like a doomer.
Yeah, or even when you go,
apartment.
or when you go walking in the rain and stuff, it's like a cool like feeling and so on. But then I want the opposite. I don't want like sort of miserly kind of rain, and then the sun kind of comes out and it kind of gets humid and sticky. Like, no thanks, you know.
So sounds pretty boring.
There's an essential but that's just two parts of it. But then also like no gravity. I wonder how that would work with.
I think it's safe to say that no one would worship any of us, but you know, whatever.
What would your sphere be, Scott?
I don't know.
Probably same thing I said, right? Like it's got your subjective take on it. It may not sound that cool. Like this is very different to if someone said, "Hey, not that I would want this, but let's just say Bethesda was like, we're going to add a Daedric Prince into Elder Scrolls 6. There's going to be 18 of them. We're going to add one, and you get to design it." This is not what I would do.
But like, what would you have fun, like, governing kind of over mortals? Doing like as in your sphere. So remember, mortals are going to kind of like worship you because of these reasons somewhat, you know. Marin's Dagon's worship for like, you know, so you can destroy enemies and ambition and all that kind of stuff. Or like what would you want to be worship?
Just having fun.
These
but not too much.
Yeah.
Not too much, just enough to I don't know.
Like just even think of a.
When you say what do you want to be worshipped for, it is kind of different. Like maybe I don't want to be worshipped.
No, but it's
then.
like, for example,
maybe it would be my realm, but I would act more like Nocturnal and not really, or like Periite, and I would just kind of be removed from it. I don't think I would be a Daedric Prince who is very like, here I am.
See, I think I would love to be like, I guess I could put like, it would be cool to be like a storyteller, go like a spheres of stories, songs and lies, or something. It could be everything like that all mixed in one, like, or like, you know, moving, you know, Daedric Prince of moving truths or some shit. Like you could put some poetic kind of spin on it, but then your part in the sort of metaphysical world as you go in and you like tell stories and tales and fabricate things to actually change like
they come alive.
Moving parts of culture, they come alive. Well, but also, I know not so much the realm, but even in the mortal realms, in like Mundus or whatever, it's like you'd be influencing things somewhere. Give this group this tale, this sort of.
So you just want to be playing like a top-down video game where you can just like basically world build, but it like has really, really good graphics and like you're playing it in VR mode, looking down.
You can put them all in the swimming pool and take out the ladder kind of thing.
But I feel like spinning, like I guess spinning the stories, it's probably like I guess closer to a Daedric version of Ifri or something. It's the idea that it coming into reality. You know, like you're taking characters and Pelennor and or these kinds of things and spinning stories about them that then become part of the the mythos, or
What if you? Yeah, it wouldn't really work in the
But
Elder
so,
Scrolls.
so like for example, people like that would come worship at what you would be things like, you know, poets or other storytellers or people that like tales and stuff. Like, you know what I mean? If you're trying to think of a thing.
But if you're writing any good stories, you would have to be responsible for killing a lot of people in those stories.
sure.
And I suppose,
But I'm a
my
Daedric
point is,
prince.
but you're not, because you're you, and you just
But
put
that's
your
not
head
the
in a Daedric
question.
prince's.
If you three were Daedric
Yeah.
princes,
But you have your brain still. Like, it's kind of like you would.
yeah. But if your
Isn't it
brain
like-
or something through the lens of a Daedric prince, it's like you see things.
You just get really
differently.
desensitized.
I mean,
over
I'm pretty
time.
sure if anyone became a god, it would be very like, you know, disorienting, and there's sort of distance between you and like mortal reality, because mortal reality is no longer even your reality.
I mean, here's
every
the funny
Daedric
thing.
prince is a little bit sociopathic by
Yeah.
default by
Here's the
not
thing.
being mortal. You know,
Here's the thing. I feel like realms would change. Like right now, we'd all make the realms we talked about,
Yeah.
but in 1,000 years, we would be so bored of these realms that they would look completely different and far more interesting.
Well, what would your spheres be then?
I already said it would be at the start. It would be some kind of like the Bella/Mara themed thing.
For a Daedric prince, though.
Whoa.
Daedric princes, yeah, I don't know. They
The
don't
idea-
have to
when
be
they-
bad.
No,
the
no,
way
but
I
like
interpret the
camaraderie
question, hold on.
with-
The way I interpret the question anyway is because Aedra don't really have these like interesting realms that they can transform and control, which is why my whole take was when it's like if you were a Daedric prince, it's not like if you're evil. It's kind of
Well,
like
not evil,
if you
but
had
like
a
an-
realm that you can control,
Like an element of, even if you were thinking about it like Anno Padme, like you were Padmaic, like an element of sort of chaos in the waters of oblivion. You're not like this sort of. Do you know kind of what I'm getting at? Like,
Yeah.
look, put it this way: if you were making a character, like a Daedric prince of God or of love and compassion, and who lives in a Earth-like place, doesn't sound like zesty.
Honestly,
no, it sounds
but what
boring,
I'm
which
saying
is
is-
what I said from the outset.
But you are a Daedric prince. Like if you were to be a Daedric prince, well, it's an interesting sort of one that you.
Look, you
think-
just want me
I
to
think my one
say-
is the best. Like the idea that saying that my realm would be a pub where you've got all these different Daedric creatures, all of these visiting mortals. You said you wanted song and stories. In a pub, you've got musicians, you've got people having a chat, like having a drink and telling their stories. You've got people playing sport, you've got people having chats, all of this stuff. Everything good.
and some guy
happens
just
in
gets
pubs.
glassed.
Look, in a Daedric realm, that's part and parcel.
But as if, like you said, that's just watered down Sanguine's
Yeah.
one of his realms.
Well, all right.
But
sorry.
you should
It's right. Scott, you just judged us all, but all you said was zero gravity and some flowers.
I
Yeah.
knew that
Oh, and I
question
said the
would be
whole
a rabbit hole.
storyteller thing. I judged
Yeah.
yours because yours was Earth
Yeah.
plus love and compassion. Bro, couldn't get
Nah.
more generic sounding.
Michael's answer was basically like the next top model saying world peace.
Yeah.
All right, let's
All right.
let's ditch that question now.
Let's toddle on. Gus says, "Have you all considered doing an Elder Scrolls story series like you all did with the Fallout Redemption one? I enjoyed listening to that and think an ES one would be pretty interesting." Yeah,
We kind of did an
definitely-
episode, actually. You may not know
Oh,
about it.
yeah.
We do have a story episode, which I actually can't remember the name
the
of.
Dwemer Vault story or something. I forgot.
Yeah. I'm just
Right there,
like-
but like I would well, there you go. There's one, but like I'd consider it, but
I think when I've thought about this a lot as well, and I think what was really special about Redemption was having the artwork from Tom. What was his
Yeah,
name?
Tom Hanchett.
A fantastic artist, and he was able, even though it was only a few images, to kind of bring to life the characters we made up. Whereas if we were to do it again, we wouldn't really be able to do it properly with in-game footage, because you don't want the story we'd write in prose to be constricted to just what we can show in game with character creation like that. I almost feel like you need the kind of original images.
yeah,
Is one element, but at the same time, it would still be really fun to do.
I mean, like, ultimately it comes down, if there is a massive, like, ask for it, if you guys really would like something like that. There's even things I've thought of before as even expanding, like, you know, with the fan fiction or apocryphal, whatever, parts of the lore or, like, background for extra characters and so on, and history and so on, because there's some really cool parts, like, you know.
Yeah, like a futuristic kind of take on Elder Scrolls as a story.
Oh,
as
that
well,
was that
one
one
you were
thing that I
thinking
lost.
about.
I lost. Cyberpunk was so... I had this written. Cyberpunk was so bad. It bothered me so much, but it kind of like, I was like, oh, maybe I'll do this. I basically had like a cyberpunk version of Tamriel, and I was making it up, and with like, you know, it was like Clavicus File had like corporations and stuff, and I was trying to like merge it all, and I had like this cool character and everything, but I'm like, yeah, it didn't really go anywhere. I wasn't, because I just kind of lost it, but I just lost it, like, because also like the work, I was trying to find a way to represent it and so on, and I was trying to like think of ways to actually get it visually done.
One thing that would be cool is if we got into writing short stories in the universe, you could like I don't exactly know how you do it, but mod them into books in the game as well. That'd be pretty cool to come across in your adventure.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you could find someone to help us do that, but you'd have to.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like the most complex mod, so we could.
Yeah.
I guess we should move to Key from the End. It says, if you could each pick one fan theory or unconfirmed piece of lore and make it canon, which one would you pick, and how would you go about adding it to the story? That's kind of tough, because I don't have this list of fan theories in front of me to just like pick off.
I definitely didn't come up with this fan theory, but I kind of like adopted it so much that it's canon in my head. But the idea that Mankar Cameron is a descendant of a long line of Aelids who's just gradually been working on a way to get revenge for the Elysian Rebellion, I quite like the idea of him having Aelid origins.
Me
That's
too,
probably
but
the one I'd pick.
The problem with the question, well, not the question, but thinking about answering it, is, to me that sounds like a boring one to pick. Like, you get one, and yours is like, I want Mankar Cameron to have been Aelid. Like,
I mean,
it doesn't change. It doesn't really change that much.
Yeah, but would you want to change that much?
Well,
like,
I'm sure there is some really cool. I don't know. I just feel like there should be something else that's way of more magnitude, I guess, more impactful.
Yeah, but I guess the thing is too, a lot of fan theories are small, so like, or they like making connections between things and like obviously confirming them, but trying to confirm them, but aren't
like, I could be like, oh, it would be really cool if Lucien Lachance sent you to do the house party mission because it was practice for the purification, but I wouldn't pick that as one fan theory that I would make canon, you know?
Just like rustle feathers and say that like that the Marima are actually like the closest to the original elf look, and that the elves, the high elves, are just the ultimate.
Oh, there's one like Tamriel being Old Maris is a cool theory.
I guess they all kind of lie in theories, but some of these theories are like so prevalent and so like it's almost like, you know, in the same way that like any like theory crafting or like recent sort of, I guess like even science or whatever, it's like evolution is technically a theory, but it's like generally it's the best you've got.
There's one.
Do you know
I
what
would
mean?
implement the towers one. If that, I would make that true.
Oh, sure.
I would. That's a pretty good one that I
agree
would
with
pick.
that.
I think you were telling me before actually that you wanted to pick Elder Scrolls and Fallout universes are connected. Scott, you were telling me that was
one.
Scott was saying was saying that was his favorite fan theory.
Because in Starfield, all the planets you can visit are called like Akatosh, Debella. They're all named after the divines because it's
actually. I wouldn't be surprised. Surely there's going to be some Easter eggs in there.
Oh
in
yeah,
Starfield, for sure. But go to a planet and there's a Nern route, and you're like.
I just googled 25. Found a list on Google 25 Elder Scrolls fan theories that might actually be true. It's like the Dwemer blinded the elves. Cool.
Yeah, like a lot of these theories, even though then he did specifically say unconfirmed lore, but most of the unconfirmed lore, it doesn't really matter that much if it's confirmed. If there's a lot of evidence to suggest it could be true, you can kind of, you know, it's fun to consider the fact that it is true. Like the Towers theory, not knowing the true motives of the Aldmeri Dominion is part of the mystery that makes it interesting to be like, is that what they're trying to achieve? Or are they just basically trying to conquer Tamriel and that's it? You know, it's fun that having conspiracies in the Elder Scrolls is fun.
It is, but like I feel like there's differences a little bit. Like, you know, with the Dwemer one, like it's I kind of agree with that sentiment with the Dwemer because there's so much mystery, but also I feel like they're like, whereas the Thalmor, I guess I almost like treat it as true in my head, and maybe that's just an effect of me treating it almost as true, so I don't really, you know, consider others. But I also think it's such a good like meta plot for all the Elder Scrolls universe that it's like it should be true, because if they don't, like for example, if they don't play into any of that for say Elder Scrolls 6 or something like that. It's like, what's it going to be? They're going to, I don't know, the evil left-handed elves have returned and sword singers unite and come back. Do you know what I mean?
I'm surprised actually no one said anything related to the Dwemer as their pick. But
no, I like the Dwemer being a mystery, and I know that's like some people like, oh, they'll eventually want to know, but it's kind of like it's part of the charm even of a lot of lost civilization kind of things. Like, I guess maybe that's part of it. Like Thalmor aren't a lost civilization, or like their mystery doesn't. Do you know what I mean? Like it kind of. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like, and it would get messy. They will give like this sounds so pretentious, but they'll give the wrong answer. But like they will give an answer and then it will invalidate a whole bunch of other things, and then I guarantee it would be done wrong, if that
certain
makes sense.
Things
like
can be so hyped up and the mystery around it can be so hyped up that no resolution is going to be as good as the mystery.
Yeah.
All right, well here's an interesting opposite question by Stephen Cardone. If each of you could remove one piece of lore from the canon, what would you choose? That is, what part of the lore do you think should be removed to make everything else more cohesive and consistent?
Should we even ask Scott, or should we just ignore him?
It's the Shellback Argonians. They're gone.
Yeah, I know. That's I guess what the expectation is. And like, yeah, I agree. That would be good if it's gone. However, I feel like we have to think about this a bit, because I feel like there's other pieces in the lore that would be better removed. Like, as much as the Ebonheart Pact is the part thing is sort of contrived and annoying.
It's too small. It's too small.
Yeah, it's one alliance. It disappears in the span of time in the history. It doesn't make sense, but whatever. It's in this like tiny like period of the Second Era that happens. Do you know what I mean? Whereas it's not something that necessarily like permeates throughout the rest of Elder Scrolls history.
What about the plane meld? take out the plane meld.
I mean, to be honest, I don't know why. I've just kind of rolled my eyes at like even the idea that Dagon's doing the same thing in Blackwood, trying to do the same thing. Like, I guess, you know, that's what he wants to do anyway, invade the realm. But it just like
makes the Oblivion Crisis feel cheap.
Yeah, because within the span of like it's happened before, like both Molag Bal and
no one's talking about it in Oblivion.
Yeah, because it was
or Skyrim.
Yeah,
we've said this before, but like obviously ESO lore is canon, and there's a lot of it that fits in perfectly with the way the lore has been built up for however many years. But there's also the unavoidable reality that it is an MMO with millions of protagonists running around doing so much great, like massive feats of history in the span of a few years, that you kind of chalk a lot of that up to, yeah, it's canon, but I kind of just don't pay attention to it. Like if ESO add stories like the Khajiit mythology, that's fantastic. It's great to know that about the Khajiit. But if they add this thing like, oh, during the year 582, there were millions of people who go to the hunting grounds of Hircine, and then they go to the Deadlands, and then they go to the Cold Harbor, and they do all of this stuff. And it's like, actually, you kind of just write some of that off as it's just has to happen for the game.
I would kind of actually say, I guess my kind of opinion on a lot of Elder Scrolls Online lore added is a lot of the passive cultural religious kind of stuff added is actually often quite good, but the actual like events of it, like the quest, is kind of like you know what, I feel the same. Like I'm kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever, it can kind of.
So what would we get rid of then? The Daedric invasions?
Look, if I can't think of anything,
there's probably other things that are like,
there's probably stuff to do with the Dragonborn, as far as like some of the Skyrim Dragonborn stuff
that's true,
worth removing.
Like even the Hornlords shift away from their traditional pantheon and like stuff like that.
Yeah, well, that's a proper. This is probably a really controversial one for a lot of people because they love it and they grew up with Skyrim first, and you know might not like the other games or really attached to the dragon stuff. But like I would have actually kind of zipped the whole dragon cult, dragon stuff out of existence. I liked the Thum as like a Nordic sort of power from Kine and about breath and all of that kind of stuff, and like connection to the weather and so on, rather than it being like dragon superpowers. So I would actually axe the whole dragon cult part. Like you can have dragons still, like as in related to like Akatosh or a few legendary creatures and stuff like that, but not like the sort of, he was Alduin with his dragon army and everything, because I kind of like Alduin even more as a conceptually as like this big terrifying Ragnarok end of world eater kind of thing, rather than I'm here to dominate men. You know, it's kind of
yeah
that might get clipped.
No, I agree with that as like a big one.
Yeah, so I would probably remove the dragon cult. There's like, once again, like, just to clarify, like, there's cool parts of it that are there now, but it's just like, I think if that was removed and built from the ground up, I feel like there's other ways of doing it or introducing similar cool things.
Yeah, the lore itself is interesting, but it actively detracts from what makes the Nords interesting in certain respects and turns them into much more just Vikings, Scandinavian types. Takes away a lot of what really makes them unique.
Well, Marcus Wellander asks, what's your favorite in-game character? I would like each of you to answer.
Here's I don't know if this is a hot take, and but I actually think Ulfric Stormcloak, in terms of like conceptually his importance to the actual story and what's going on, his voice and his just sort of character arc, like his backstory and so on, is interesting. It's like one of the more interesting ones to me.
Could I just say, like, I'm assuming deities count. Like, Vivek is a character.
No,
right.
But in-game...
Come on, Vivek's a pretty
when they said
character
in-game, I feel like they were talking about Skyrim, right?
No, just in-game. It's an Elder Scrolls.
For some reason, I was just thinking of Skyrim then. I guess Vivek, but I feel like that's cheap. It just feels a little bit cheap.
It feels cheap, but it's true.
Yeah, I guess Vivek would be...
Yeah, because I'm trying to think outside the box, because I guess, like, with Vivek... Choosing Vivek almost lets you choose Shea Gorath or lets you choose a Daedric Prince. So I do get what you mean, that if it says in-game, maybe we should stray away from the really poggers characters. I mean, because I was even considering, even though he's not that well fleshed out, someone like Umriel the Unfeathered is really interesting as an enemy in Knights of the Nine. But I don't know. I don't know if that doesn't count.
Because he feels a little bit more... I know you do fight him, but he feels a little bit in lore in the same way that you kind of like talk to Pelinal's ghost and stuff, but it's not the same as like the Pelinal in the stories.
I'll say Nazim.
But yeah, I don't know. I just thought I would... The reason for Skyrim, at least, I would say Ulfric is just because his backstory is kind of tragic and he plays a big part, and it's so many like misguided intentions. And we did a video on it and talked about, like, you know, workings of shame and stuff in his background, and there's cool like little theories and stuff you can build around him. And I just think he's a central cool character. It's kind of tragic almost, and I don't know, Ulfric Stormcloak, because I think he's one of the more fleshed out characters in the entire thing. And people might go like, Brynjolf because he was like a cool buddy or something like that, or Delvin because he's got a Cockney accent and he stands out, but like beyond that.
Well, Ulfric is good as well because for the role he plays in the game, he's kind of perfect because you can see him as like a heroic leader figure to rally behind if you choose to join the Stormcloaks, but he also makes a great villain at the same time without being a ha twiddling the moustache evil villain. He's a character that you can easily really hate or really get behind, so he's perfect for his role.
And I don't know why, but it's just something that's interesting in characters. But conviction is just something interesting in either a hero or a villain. It's just an interesting sort of trait that they... Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just... Yeah.
What about Maik the Liar?
Yeah, no way.
Is that your favorite? How about Delphine?
No. I think I would say Ulfric out of...
But if we have to give an answer each, we can't all just agree on the same thing.
I mean, Parthenax is a really cool character, at least just if we're talking very much in game, just having dialogue with him, he's got some of the most memorable lines of dialogue and gives you one of the most like
that's my favorite quote, man. That's so cool.
So he's an answer as well if we're talking specifically Skyrim.
Divath Fear is pretty cool. But I know it's not Skyrim, but like, that's definitely a character.
And I mean, I didn't want to say Mankar Cameron, but he's also really good.
To be honest, that's pretty fair. Like, I would actually say, like, if it was Oblivion, Mankar Cameron's pretty choice. And Divath Fear, if you can't pick, like, Vivek, Realm Alexia or anything like that, if you have to pick, like, a mortal character, Divath Fear then.
Yeah, I feel like Mankar Cameron would be pretty high up there for me. But picking just one is so hard.
Yeah, because then like Yager and Bagan's a good one too. It's lots. But yeah, I think we've done that one.
All right. Matthew Hendricks says, congrats on a full year, guys. Excited to see where things go from here. Since Talos didn't have to sacrifice his power for creation, why is he still as weak as the other 8 divines? Now, I I'm assuming what like is meant by this is like obviously he doesn't play the same sort of role. He plays a similar role to the other divines, like kind of passive, not a big player. But I would say that it's actually more, at least the way I would like interpret it all is that he's more disassociated with things as time goes on. Like we talked about last episode that like Wolf says like, oh, it's time for the Empire to pass and so on. Like he's not attached to the worldly things as much anymore. And then, you know, I just sort of like, it's not weakness as much as not presence, if that makes sense. Because
Periite's strength can't really be judged because Periite doesn't do anything.
And also, if he was so
Really.
unimportant and weak, it's like, why are the Thalmor concerned with trying to abolish his worship and so on? So it's kind of why I feel like they actually do see him as a threat.
And he did ascend from being a mortal too. Like, we don't know all the inner workings of how divinity works, but if they were already like divine and he came there from a mortal state, I feel like him being as powerful as them is still a massive deal, if that is the case.
But I think it's either game design and they just never bring it up, or I think the other like better like explanation is that he's just doesn't really care for the mortal things in the same way that he once did. Like when you're fresh out of being an emperor, now you're a god and you're like, oh, well, I'm going to help my empire and everything. But then over time, you might be like, you know, you see generations go by, you have no connections to your like great grandkids, and you might not really care for them in the same, you know, way, or care about the empire. And like, you know, look up what Wolf says in.
Plus, how do you even confirm? Like, this sounds a bit weird, but how do you even confirm that Tiber Septim has ascended to godhood? We've got confirmation of that. Is it? Talos to me feels more like a symbol that more serious, like real gods who have been there since the beginning just kind of use, like as a symbol. I see Talos as just an aspect of Shore, as we kind of talked about in the last podcast.
Depending on some of the lore and what you believe and so on, but like, you know, him becoming a god and everything and changing Cyrodiil from jungle to like to land, I guess that's actually an example of why he isn't as weak. Like he did something right there, you know, for Red Legions, I love you, and changed it.
So
that's true.
So is the idea that he ascended, but he was still alive enough to interact with people at the very beginning? Or
I'd say so. And then over time, like being a god for a long time, you become disconnected from mortal affairs, and then lose interest.
And then your realm changes from the Earth realm to the pub realm.
Because I kind of imagined it
to the flowers realm.
That he essentially just dies, and then he's revered as if he joined the gods, as opposed to...
Well, that's how he's revered.
Yeah, as opposed to him I'm now the god, I'm now turning, like, clicks his fingers, and the jungles are now flat.
Well, they do, like, say, like, he was so good that he was joined a place among the divines. Like, he was he became a god for being so cool.
Yeah.
It's just
whereas
obviously
that
is difficult.
The reality is the Daggerfall story and so on. It has to do with Mentel and Crux and the Numidium and all of that metaphysical kind of jargon. But you can look into plenty of videos like that.
One-eyed Epi. If you were dropped into Tamriel with all of your lore knowledge, what would you do? Let's say you were dropped in at the start of Skyrim.
All of my lore knowledge, because the problem is like a lore, like
who am I? That's the first question I have. Because if I'm just an Imperial or a Breton,
let's just say you're
Michael, and I'm very mortal with I'm not a Dragonborn.
Let's just assume then. Let's make an assumption that it's either sort of Imperial, Nord, Breton, just some whatever variation of human. Just say dropped into a town in Cyrodiil somewhere. Maybe you're a Syro-Nordic kind of person from Coral or something.
The question was in Skyrim.
Oh, sorry. Let's say it's
you
dropped
put at the start of Skyrim. That made me think of the Helgen situation. So there's dragons coming back to eat the world, and if you're not the Dragonborn, what can you do? Just live it up. And
I think a boring answer. I probably would go and join the College of Winterhold and just I'd keep my lore knowledge, but then add to that a bunch of actual magic. It's hard to turn that down. And then I'd go open a farm in Whiterun Hold and just chill there.
I feel like I'd just turn tail and go back to Cyrodiil. Like, just because, like, a comfier, kind of less dangerous place. Like, I also don't want to live in a country where civil war's going on and dragons are returning and stuff like that. I could just go live in even Bruma or somewhere else, and, like, I'm not going to be some heretic or something with the gods. Like, I'll just... stay out of people's way.
If the option to go south across the border, I'd probably do the same, but then do something similar, like join the College of Whispers or something like that.
To be honest, like, do you know what might be a pretty sweet gig is actually being a priest of some kind? Like, especially if you have a lot of law knowledge, because a lot of theology, like, you know, and I don't mean like, you know, in the sense we have priests, like you could be like, you know, a priest of Debella or something. Is a very different lifestyle than a real.
I knew you were going to get back to there somehow.
Yes,
Yeah.
But as if that doesn't.
But that's
sound
what
like
I said. I said just live it up
Mm.
because the world is going to end unless the Dragonborn stops Alduin, and there are no guarantees.
Yeah. So I would go like, yeah, I'd say Cyrodiil, and there's probably, you know, probably go to the Imperial City, and there's probably a cool art gallery or cool books or something.
I guess
or
the
like,
big question, when he says dropped in with all your lore knowledge, would you try to achieve Kim? Would you try to achieve
I feel like
divinity?
I
given
feel
what we
like
know?
that kind of stuff requires a lot of luck for not just dying on your mission to do that, but like
Yeah, it's also
B,
like
it requires some innate kind of talents, and the question doesn't specify. Like, for example, if they dropped me in and they're like, you are in the top 1%, kind of top 1% of magic users in terms of natural talent, then I would pursue that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it depends on
you can be
who I am.
and in regards to the Kim and so on, like obviously it's a concept. It can be you can know of it, but not like grasp it and become. It doesn't mean just because you know of it doesn't mean you can get it.
So I
No,
can't
but
just be like, oh, nothing.
I think this might be a trick question from Epi. That the idea is that, like, we know with our knowledge, we know that this world doesn't exist. We've been dropped. It's like, imagine living in this world and knowing the origins of the universe. You know everything. Do
you know what?
You know the developers of the
Here's
world.
here's a really if I actually had all the lore knowledge and so on, like without going like, yeah, the developers, all that kind of stuff. If you go in the world, it feels very real, but you have all of this lore knowledge just like that. It's just like, well, then I just write books. I just become an author that writes histories of this or something like that. Or like, you know, do you know what I mean? Like, because then you can just write all those books. You can probably live off, make some money, sit a comfy life in the Imperial City or something, and then do other things.
Or you would head straight to Nocturnal's Shrine in Cyrodiil, knowing you're going to get this easy quest to get the skeleton key.
Yeah.
Do that. And then use a skeleton key to do whatever you want.
I would undo creation. There's no chilling in creating a world that you know doesn't exist. I'd undo it and then come back to the real
buddy,
world.
I've got news for you, bro. Dun, 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 dun.
The world is a simulation.
Yeah. But
anyway, I think we can move on to Zayn Malik.
Didn't know he was a fan. That's cool.
Apparently. If you could have an Elder Scrolls spin-off game with a different genre, like adventure, strategy, and so on, what genre would you want it to be?
Hands down for me, I think I would pick like a strategy type things to the effect of like, you know, there's I think
What's that game? The name's escaping me. That they
Crusade-
actually did an Elder Scrolls
mod of. So they did an Elder Scrolls
Crusader
mod
Kings,
for
yeah.
Crusader Kings.
Yeah.
And that's good and all, but I also do like the actual like battles with the units and so on, like the Total War games. So if you had some kind of synthesis of the two, or some kind of strategy, Civilization, Crusader Kings, or Total War kind of combination, that would be really cool because there's lots of things in the lore. Like, you know, imagine doing like, you know, you set your time period and it's first era, and then you're like the Elysian armies, and
I think I'd like that as well.
you know-
and then you could like even choose from all the different Daedra or Aedra as religions to build for your society.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, this society worships.
Yeah,
I don't know.
'cause it-
Mehrunes Dagon,
and
then
it takes advantage of that sort of sandbox kind of fun. It's like, oh, what if I play the Reachman and then do kind of like what Dukarak the Black Drake did and take the Imperial City and take all of Tamriel, or like what if I start off as an Argonian and do the same?
because I feel like an adventure game, well, not adventure game, but any kind of linear game, I wouldn't like just a linear story, because to me, that's not what the Elder Scrolls is about. And it would be cool, but it would be like, may as well be a movie.
Have either of you guys played, or I assume you heard of, but do you know Hades?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of like the idea of a roguelite or a roguelike where you're kind of maybe in Boethiah's realm, potentially in her scenes, where you essentially are trying to escape a Daedric realm and you meet like lesser Daedra and things like this, other characters along the way. You improve your stats and skills, and it basically plays like a roguelike game.
It could be cool if you actually had like, I feel like to use, instead of just the one realm, maybe for the escape story or something, but it would be cool if it was multiple realms with the multiple gods, because you know how it's got all the different characters, you know,
kind of like a Mori and
Hades
Xenos going between the realms,
yeah,
kind of thing.
That sounds cool, but it's probably not my flavor of game that I would pick if I had any to choose.
Yeah, it's not my first pick, but it'd be cool. But like, if you know, once again, it's like if they were going to all of a sudden make heaps of Elder Scrolls games and like, you know, make a Dark Brotherhood, Morag Tong, Dishonored style game about the split, you know, set made by Arcane Studios, not by Bethesda, as an additional thing, I'd be like, yeah, that's mad. But it's like, if you were asking me if I could just conjure like one that I'd pick, I think I'd pick the sort of like a very polished Total War Crusader Kings kind of sandbox game like that. When I mean sandbox,
I just want Elder Scrolls 6.
Yeah, that's the
what
real.
I want.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a question from Sesu. Would you guys ever be open for a Kirkbride guest episode, Lamau? Yeah, I mean, probably, why not?
Yeah, for sure. I would at some point. It's kind of like there's at the moment there's some deeper like I haven't read every single bit of Kirkbride's stuff and so on. It's like kind of would want to be brushed up on it and so on and like but yeah, I feel like
juicy questions
eventually, huh?
Ask all the juiciest questions.
Yeah, and like yeah, but definitely would.
All right, XX Saruman 82XX. If you each were forced to sell your soul to one of the Daedric princes, whom would you choose and why? Thanks for the phenomenal content, guys. Well, thanks you so much for supporting us. And that's to everyone watching this. Like, massive thank you for supporting the podcast. Like, it's been fun and we're keen to keep it going. But if I was forced to sell my soul to one of the Daedric princes... I guess you start thinking of their afterlives then, right? Like Hircine's afterlife is pretty like okay compared to some of the other ones.
Yeah, hold on, I might have to pull up the whole list just to see it. I'm thinking
There's probably
Azura.
Something more chill. Really?
Yeah, if you completely simped for her and you were just like comfortable doing it, like that, just being like, yes, Azura, my queen. I feel like you might have a pretty sweet afterlife, right?
But what would you have in that afterlife?
I don't know.
In her Azura's realm.
You get to rub oils on her feet, dude.
Like, you know what I mean? Like what's so special about it?
I think you get to look at Big Booba, bro.
Like Moonshadow is said to hold too much beauty that it can make you half blind. Contains flowers, waterfalls, city of silver. Azura resides in a rose palace and is welcoming to mortal travelers. But
if the blindness isn't literal, then that's a pretty nice sounding place to be forced to live.
Yes, but also you may be alone for eternity. Like you don't actually know who else is there. There'll be no interaction. You probably just go insane. Right?
Couldn't you just essentially say that for every realm? Like there's gonna be other occupants, people.
Hircine's realm is filled with like hunters. Like if you were a hunter, there would be other people there, and kind of like a sense of.
I imagine every realm has hordes of lesser Daedra just existing there and potentially worshipping. But because the thing is, like, I feel like with a lot of them, like say Boethia, where you just get to fight all day, every day for the rest of your life, or hunt in Hircine's realm, a lot of that you'd get bored of. Whereas I don't know. I feel like in Azura's realm, so long as you venerated her and worshipped her properly, you could kind of just enjoy the beauty of her realm.
I feel like Azura is one of the better choices, because even if you go with the other traditional sort of like lightish feeling ones, like, you know, Meridia is known for like burning out any idea of sense of like individuality and bringing you into this like light husk kind of thing. Vaymina or Nightmares. But also like, it's also who would you want? Like, you know, there's things like, oh, maybe Sanguine's revelry stuff would be fun, but he's also like, he's the same kind of guy that could screw you over hardcore, like, and like to be in some dark kind of stuff. Like he's a bit twisted.
Well, let's just checklist. It wouldn't be Vaymina, it wouldn't be Sheogorath or Sanguine, like you're saying, or Periite, or I mean Nocturnal. Nah, that's really dreary. Namira, no. Melagh, no. Meridia, probably not. Mephala, no. Not Dagon. Malakath. I mean, if you've got 1,000 wives in the Ash Forge.
But remember the question too is like who you give your soul to.
Yeah, I don't really want to be this weird outcast.
I think it's Azura, dudes.
I think it is Azura. I think I would live with my queen and worship every day so that I don't get tortured. But
Yeah, it makes sense.
The only
because
other
as an
option-
orc, you're kind of like permanently considered an outcast too.
This is a weird one, and it's probably like riskier. But if you go with the idea that sort of like your soul belongs to Molag Bal when you become a vampire, like if it was becoming a vampire and you kind of want a chance at living as a vampire for the rest of your life, like you could have a pretty cool existence on Tamriel. Just don't want to get.
Just don't die. If you actually get like decapitated at one point, game over. You are now in Cold Harbor.
Yeah,
Probably not worth it.
Azura, I think, is the go. You know.
Yeah. I've been convinced. Everything else doesn't sound too good. None of it does, though, to be honest.
All right, Christopher Stokich. Any of you considered applying for jobs at Bethesda? They currently have quest designer positions posted.
I mean, like, okay, we've thought about it. Like anyone has thought about all kinds of things, but the end conclusion you reach is that it's probably not that great compared to just doing YouTube. Like for starters, we would have to stop YouTube because there would be massive like conflicts of interest, because it would be like you can't make an Elder Scrolls 6 discussion where you're talking about what you'd want in Elder Scrolls 6 if you're literally designing some quests for Elder Scrolls 6. Like it would get a bit suspicious. Also, we would know like everything coming out before it does.
But
and all
it's
these
also
other things.
possible that it's not entirely like you could do it as in like, for example, like I also don't want to move to America and have to live over there.
Yeah.
But if it was like not a consulting sounds so like
as a contractor it would be
pretentious.
okay.
Yeah, a contract, for example.
If you were a contracted writer for some quests, I would consider it. But I guess the other thing is you got to realize that unless you have like full creative control, there's going to be a lot of things you also disagree with and things that annoy you. Like you're going to design, I designed these, I don't know, 4 quests, but then so-and-so writer went and ruined it by adding this and that, which I didn't agree with, and it wasn't lore friendly or it was too simple.
Like the most realistic thing is like writing some lore books in that way, like, because that can also be done in a way where it's like you don't know the quests or anything or so on, but it's like, there's some like extra stuff or fluff.
I mean, look,
like,
put it this way. If they asked us to write some quests, and fine, I would do it 100%. I would do it. But the idea of having to like give up FudgeMuppet to go work for them and not have full control over like certain aspects of the game anyway, and then it's just this mishmash of ideas. I don't know.
I don't mind if it's like I wouldn't like if it was just some lore creation stuff and so on, and you just give it to them and then they can do with what they like and what makes it into the final game makes it in. Like I wouldn't.
But that's what I'm saying. I would if they just said do some quests. But in terms of actual like becoming my, career, for lack of better words, I think I'd rather be doing this. Don't know.
Yeah.
It would be awesome, but like being a fan and making videos is also kind of like we wouldn't want to give that up. Yeah, the idea if we could somehow write quests or write lore for Bethesda that would make its way into the game and then be able to make videos on it, which is kind of is a big part of our passion. That would be amazing. But not having the best of both worlds would make it a tough call.
Let's just make some fan fiction lore stuff, and then they can just put it in there for free. They'll just make it canon in Elder Scrolls 6.
An open letter to Bethesda. If there's anything we say that you want to put in the games, go for it.
Yeah. All right. Did you change that name?
No, I did not. It does
because you're clicking your click is next to it.
You're talking about the cock wambler.
Yeah,
that one.
Yeah, I did not change it.
Okay. Do you think Bethesda is going in a bad direction in terms of simplifying their games to appeal to a larger, much more casual audience? Also, what is your honest prediction in terms of when you think the Elder Scrolls 6 will be released? Also, I love your content, and Drew's a hottie.
I didn't see that part.
It's going red.
Goes great with the username.
I think as an answer to this, it's like it's a yes and no question, because like yes, obviously in lots of ways, but I feel like streamlining and like reducing things gets a bad rap. Like I don't know, maybe this is just a personal thing, but for example, with Ination's mods that expand the perks and so on for the skill trees, you have like the Ordinator one, which is really cool and it's big and there's lots of things, but I've often found that I like the minimalistic mods because it's more bang for your buck and sort of it cuts a lot of the fat, so everything that's left is generally really good rather than having like a big bloated thing. Like I always like a bit more of a manicured sort of system or lore or whatever. So I don't like necessarily think, some people I feel like they suggest complexity, like huge amounts of complexity, but it's like, is this huge effort of all of this complexity, is it actually adding a lot to this game, or is it adding things?
I know what you mean. I guess a simple answer, which we've talked about before, is that obviously we don't like that they're stripping out some of the role-playing mechanics and different things, and we would want them to add it back in, like the things we've talked about, like more diverse races, classes, and birth signs, and all that kind of stuff is cool. But yeah, like there are some things that you can streamline and other things that you shouldn't. I will say this, if we believe Todd, which is obviously take everything he says with a grain of salt, if he's saying Starfield is going to be like have the strongest role-playing like focus that they've ever had, that to me sounds at least like a step in the right direction for the next Bethesda game after that, which is the Elder Scrolls 6, right?
Yeah. I hope so, but it's hard to not be cynical when it's 16 times the detail. Like,
yeah. Also, on the second part of that question, I think
the Drew's a hottie part, or
on the about in terms of whether when you think the Elder Scrolls 6 will be released, this might annoy people, and I don't mean it in a negative way, because I think ESO coming out like back in 2014 and still being a thing now, I think it's been incredibly good for the community because it keeps people interested in it. Like there are so many people who still love and play that game, and they've added a lot of cool lore, but I do think it's a reality that the success of Elder Scrolls Online as an MMO and the amount of money MMOs make versus single player experiences, that definitely has allowed Bethesda Softworks to take as long as they possibly want to bring out an Elder Scrolls 6. I think if MMOs didn't exist, ESO didn't exist, Elder Scrolls 6 would not have been 15 years after Elder Scrolls 5. I think that is the reality of
my guess is,
why rush when you're making so much money off of ESO.
Yeah, my guess will be 2024. I'm optimistic. I'm going to put it 2024.
Yeah, I just can't, but I can't see 2023 just because Starfield comes out 2022.
Yeah,
I can't see double release 2024, 2025, one of them. If it's beyond that, it's kind of like
silly.
That's ridiculous. It's crazy. But yeah, let's go on to Pepe Sour or Saw.
Pepper Saw, like a Pepe dinosaur.
Yeah. If you were to live as a certain race in their respective homelands, where would it be? Who would you serve, and what would you do for a living? I would pick, because I'm a done with
sorry, Peppersaur is like the Bulbasaur with Pepe's face.
I would probably be a Dunmer, just any of the elves. You get to live a long life, so that's cool. If it was in the Golden Age, which is, most of Morrowind's history, like you live in a place protected by the gods, and as long as you're pious and so on, like you can live a pretty good life. Like it depends who you are in the society, of course, but that goes for anywhere. But I guess to be honest, joining once again, like I was sort of saying before, but being a priest or part of the tribunal temple in the for the tribunal in Morrowind is a pretty sweet gig. You get a lot of like power, you get a lot of like
and you
chill living.
You'd probably want to live somewhere around Mournhold, maybe in the center of Morrowind, where the conditions aren't quite so rough.
And you want to make sure as well that you're not too high ranked, though, because it's tempting to say I would be a king or I would be like the high priest, like essentially like the pope of a certain province or culture. But then you're a target. Like I feel like the sweet spot would be like just very high ranked, but not a target.
Yeah. The only thing too is like, but the one thing I was going to say too, the best part about being a priest as a Dunmer in Morrowind is that you have literally living gods to help like protect you then that are sort of involved in your plights as well, as opposed
when I say
to,
a target, I mean from your own like competitors, like other Dunmer that want to be the big priest. Like I'm sure it would actually be way more underhanded and like competitive than you think if it's this kind of position of big power and respect, like any position of power and respect is.
I think if I could have my ideal situation, I'd probably be a high elf who gets recruited into the Sigic Order, go to the Isle of Artaeum, kind of like Vanis Galerian and Manamako did, without obviously getting into necromancy. But I feel like that's a pretty good gig. You get a long lifespan, you live in a really beautiful, magical place, and you get to learn the kind of secrets of the universe, or some of them.
But you have to be a bit of a monk as well.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure it's a bit of like
lots of responsibility, but I guess that
like
comes there.
High responsibility, like kind of like.
You also have hundreds
life.
of years of life. It's not like you don't really need to rush and live it up in your 20s or whatever. You can. I'd take that gig if I like was in the order for 50 years or something, and then went on to do my own thing.
I think I would be in the Somerset Isles as a high elf as well, purely for lifespan purposes. In some high position of power, probably doesn't sound too crazy, but just whatever position lets me do whatever I want.
But it's funny,
like
because
if
back
you're
in those days
some
too, like high positions of power, like, especially nobility or kings, comes, especially in high elf culture,
I'm not
heaps of
saying
responsibilities.
But I'm not saying that, and a lot of the time, like it's not always like it will be like the real like preach purity to the masses and then do whatever you want in your own time.
Yeah,
And
but the
like,
way I
just
understood,
like-
because high elves too, it's funny, like, because you don't necessarily think, you might go like dark elves, like religious.
Then
or
perhaps a
something.
merchant, then like some super rich merchant.
Because I feel like high elf,
because then you can do what you want, but you don't have the shackles of like royalty or anything like that.
because as much as you live with like the unlimited life and stuff, which is long lives, but like society. Ultimate society seems really oppressive even for people in it, like in terms of even upper class, like all of the ridiculous, like micromanaging every little bit of cutlery movements and everything you do in your life. It's very order, like little freedom.
Yeah, I don't know. Go play Elder Scrolls Online. It's you can see it for real, and chill out in a Disney Shrekland.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that
Yeah,
So
I would
is
just
it-
pick something that maximizes my freedom, and so I can just do what I want.
funnily
and
enough, though, I
live
feel
long
like a
life.
lot of the maybe not. Maybe some of the elves actually have, like, actually, do you know what might be a decent living that I didn't really consider, but being a wood elf, chilling out and just like hunting and having a family and stuff like that could be cool in the way that you get a lot of freedom or places you can move and go, and like less, I guess, invasions and stuff like that.
It's not really free. I mean, it's just freedom within a forest.
Yeah, but they live the most like sort of romantic, open sort
Being
of
a
like
spinner or
free-ish kind of
something,
things.
being in tune
Yeah,
with your
like
fray.
like it doesn't have the same level of like rigidity as a lot of other societies. But then again, you could go being a rich person, rich merchant in the Imperial City is probably a sweet gig too.
Yeah, except then just to live a long time because you're a high elf. That'd be cool. Anyway, let's move on to Waylon Bennett. How do you guys differentiate Kirkbride's lore to that of the games, or do you believe they complement each other without being contradictory? I basically just say if it's in the most raw sense, if it's in the game, it's canon, and if it's not, then it's not. But if it sounds canon enough, then I kind of accept it in my head, but I would never go and preach it publicly as like, oh no, this is 100% like for real.
Yeah, it's like, it's the kind of thing like canon's really good and it's important, but also like interpretation and stuff on top of that is increases your people's like enjoyment or understanding of things and allows like a change of ideas and so on. And I think for good chunks of his lore, it's complementary. I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes he does go a little too far with some things, and I'm like, that's not really my taste. But that's the thing. It's all. We would treat it outside of canon. If
one way that I think it works quite well together is if you imagine that some of the kind of out of canon, out of lore stuff that Kirkbride writes, like for example, I mean, it's technically not canon, but there is references to some of the things that happen in Skyrim, like the snow whales or the flying snow whales that hover around the throat of the world, for example, who drop like kind of essentially cocaine snow on the people and they all get it really giddy and things like that. It's like you can choose just to not believe that, but you can use it in your mind as a kind of like, oh, it's a folk tale from some random village in Skyrim. So you can treat some of this really crazy lore as just ways to flesh it out without having to take it too seriously.
And examples of ones that complement greatly, in the Vivek Explained video that we've got on the channel from a while back, there's these big chunks in there where I'm talking about some of his lore about Vivek meeting Nerevar and stuff, and it provides so much extra like character and it fleshes out Vivek a lot more and provides a lot more context and so on. It greatly enhances his character. Like I pointed out as like, oh, this is out of canon kind of stuff, but sometimes I also lean a little bit to like trusting his insight a little bit more when like they write the characters like Kirkbride wrote the 36 Lessons of Evec. It's kind of like, well, then maybe he has something to say about it, like, or what at least what I'm saying is his ideas about Vivec are at least somewhat more interesting because he somewhat
because he wrote it.
And at the very least, if you kind of accept the fact that in the Elder Scrolls you have unreliable narrators, that it kind of makes the universe much more alive and real with the potential that you can hear stories and it could have just been some crap that someone's made up in a tavern or something like that, and it's that's how the real world works. There's stuff that we take as gospel truth that happened in history that some things don't happen, some things do. People embellish stories, the winners write the histories, is that saying, things like that. It makes the world so much more alive when you have that kind of thing happening. But yeah, and like one more thing about Kirkbride as well is it's something I said in a video I'm writing at the moment, is that it's kind of awkward if you have someone who's essential to writing the lore early on in the game and then they stop working there, but they had intentions for how this piece of lore was supposed to develop or why it is a certain way. So if they go on to say, oh, this is what I meant with this character, it's technically not canon, but the whole foundation of that character is in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
it is tricky.
All right, well, let's go now to Barry Dalton, lore-wise. What's the most anime thing that's ever happened in the Elder Scrolls? Now,
Dragon Breaks, probably, right?
But I wouldn't call that anime, though. Like, I meant
Why
by
not?
anime would be... Well, because anime doesn't mean, like, contrived and poorly thought out. It just means...
That's not what I meant. I just meant, like, so crazy and ridiculous. Like, multiple timelines all going...
What I'm saying is...
and converging.
What I think is one example, but it's actually technically not 100%, like, confirmed lore, is, for example, the Pancrado sword. Like, a sword singer creating this giant sword and cutting a continent in half is kind of, like, sundering a continent. That's, like, a pretty, like, anime vibe thing in the way that, like, giant swords, crazy battles kind of stuff. Like
a few years ago I made a Twitter meme that was like the YouTube title top 10 anime betrayals and put like Lucy and the Chance hanging in Apple Watch Farm. It's like so that's a bit of an anime moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, I think sword singing in general is a little like you could go as a little like weeby anyway, like to start. I mean, the whole inspiration for like Yakutans anyway, like a core foundation of their inspiration is actually Japan.
Yeah.
And summoning super swords,
spirit swords,
it's kind of, you can kind of, there could be a little bit anime feeling, I would say.
Nani.
All right. Dumbface says, so Thassil offers a little hint that all player characters are connected through the franchise in the Clockwork DLC. He calls the player character the Prisoner. You always start off that way. My question is, do you buy it? Is the Dragonborn also the hero of Kvatch, also the Nerevarine, and so on and so forth, constantly showing up in times of crises to save Tamriel? Furthermore, if it is true, could that essentially make the player character a divine, like an aspect of Akatosh or a Daedra, such as Lorcan, considering Mundus is his realm, and do you keep saving it? Thank you for all your amazing content. Happy 1 year on the podcast.
Yeah, well, as for the second part, I don't know if like they make a character divine or anything like that. People can talk about that and theorize like aspect of Lorcan, Shezareen, all that kind of stuff. But to get to the core of it there, being the player character as a prisoner and this sort of idea it's kind of like a meta recognition of you sort of your player's agency, and Vivek does this in the 36 Lessons of Evec and then things he says as well. And obviously Thassil and him are related, they both got divinity similar way. but your role as the prisoner, like the prisoner is, it's a vessel for you and so on. And so, they use that as a like sort of a poetic naming for like you who has control, because it's you in the world. But this is like getting out, like it's very like it breaks the fourth wall a bit, like it's the self-awareness kind of thing.
There is
like,
meta lore like that, kind of like the idea of the Godhead. You can imagine it's the Godhead is just the real life human beings who fought up the Elder Scrolls universe and things that you can get kind of as you've pretty much said, get meta references to lore that's in the games, but it's almost more of an Easter egg than something to take too seriously. Because if you go down the rabbit hole of thinking that the player characters are an important part of the Calpic cycle, like in a million different Calpers everyone's story is canon or whatever, it's like you can go down a lot of rabbit holes with that are fun in a meta conversation but don't really lead anywhere.
I can't remember if this is exact. I'm pretty sure in his speech as well, he's sort of like, he's very like fatalistic and deterministic about his actions and how everyone does these things, but there's kind of like an almost implied exemption for you because you're the one, the prisoner, the player, the one with exerting free will onto everything else, where NPCs have to like behave as they are programmed, like Vivek's talked about that. But like people can interpret 36 Lessons of Vivek and some of the things he's said as self-awareness that he is an NPC and you are like a player, like you have actual agency and stuff. But this is all you can kind of appreciate those sort of like meta fourth wall takes without having to integrate it into like lore takes. Do you know what I mean? But that's what I'd say to that, I think.
Okay, out-of-date toilet.
Mm-hmm.
Someone has probably asked this already, but if one race could come back / become playable in the Elder Scrolls 6 or in a spin-off game, which race would you all choose and why? How about none? I actually don't have I'll pick one, but I don't have a desire to like increase the amount of playable races. I'm really happy with how it is. I would just want them to be more fleshed out, the ones that are there.
If there was one to be injected like smoothly, like still is a sort of humanoid kind of thing, it doesn't drastically like upset the boat, is I feel like Marima, like the sea elves could fit relatively well. It's a cool, unique experience, could give it some cool gameplay things. Like some people might go, you're like, slowed or something, but it doesn't really fit with the world. Like everyone would be like, what the hell? Like arguably they would even do that to a sea elf because sea elves are very foreign. But
I feel like if they did bring back sea elves, you'd still want to have them be quite rare in the game.
Yeah.
Like I don't want this to be some weird Atlantis feeling game where everyone in it is a sea elf.
One thing I would say is like I'm not huge on like adding the I said like the playable races, like same as you, Michael. Like I feel like 10's enough. Like diversify them and flesh them out more.
Yeah.
But at the same time, one thing I would like to actually just a fun point to add is I would like them to add more races that are like sort of outside races that are sentient. So for example, that you can you meet a Slode in a quest and you're talking to a Slode, or like to goblins, or like a Minotaur and so on, like that actually have a sort of sentience. So it's not adding back playable races, it's adding like races as in like actuals, treating them as such, not just like it's just another enemy for me to kill. It'd be cool if you could go in and do a quest and there's like a goblin tribe or something and you're talking to their leader or something, but it might go south, like they might sound more bestial or something like that. But I just feel like it would be cool if they actually included that a bit. Even if the sea elves, for example, it's like, one of the quests is like, they're raiding the coast of Hammerfell or something, stop them. And it's just an NPC you can find in a quest line and you can sort of talk to the leader and so on. But it would just be a cool thing to say. In the same way, actually, how you see a snow elf in Skyrim. You see Gelebor. Like, it's a cool to meet, other characters like that. But yeah.
Dylan McKean, question. Combat is supposed to be enjoyable but not overly difficult. At times I find it can get repetitive though. Would you support a more advanced combat system? Not one at the level of complexity in games like Kingdom Come Deliverance, but just something with more layers to it, like with mods such as Wildcat Combat of Skyrim that adds injuries and perfect blocks. To what extent would you change combat given the opportunity? Honestly, I think combat is due for an overhaul, and you did beat me to it when you said, I don't want it to be like Kingdom Come Deliverance, but that's mainly because it's just hyper-realistic, and I'm not the biggest fan of that in a game like The Elder Scrolls especially. But yeah, you can definitely add some layers. Like there's the combat overhaul mod for Skyrim, which has like, dodges and different things. I mean, even in Oblivion, there were some more advanced things like... I think there were perfectly timed blocks that would result in you bashing them and they stagger. Things like that are all cool.
I guess sometimes too they like sort of look the way it moves and feels. Like I am not opposed to it at all if they want to move it to things like that sort of Dark Souls-esque kind of, even, you know, Sekiro level kind of stuff, right? On base premise, I'm all good for fluidity of movement, making it feel good and you know,
but it's got to work in first person. That's the thing.
True, but the other thing is that you've got to consider is the one fundamental part is that Elder Scrolls is about a lot of the time is about different paths, multiple play styles, being able to be a maid, combat, so on. If they put all this attention, for example, into making it like some like Sekiro fighter kind of thing, you don't want it to feel so bad to play a mage by comparison, because it's like, poor, it sucks playing like this or that or this. Only sword and shield is like the coolest way to play. Like you need to do it in a way that also supports the other play styles. Like sneaking and that needs to feel cool as combat does, as cool as mage does. And of course, you're never going to get that balance perfect, but they need to be sort of.
And that's one thing about it being an RPG is that stats are kind of important. So if you have a combat system where skill alone can kind of do everything, then the stats become less important. And then, yeah, if you have first and third person, it's also harder to make something that is satisfying to do in both. I mean, like, I've been playing Chivalry 2 recently, and that does a really good job of swords, shields, axes, like weapons like that in first and third person. It deals with archery well. So going along those lines could work. But yeah. The problem is you've got to try and make something that is satisfying, like a satisfying crunch when your sword hits in first and third person,
and it's the
make the stats work.
It's also like what you're going with for your game. Like, you know, like Mountain Blade 2 or so on, or even the first ones or so. It's like the combat's kind of like, it's not the smoothest, it's not clunky, but it's serviceable. Like this is a pretty clunky example ultimately, but it's like, the reason that's a popular game and people like to play it is not because of that. It's like, remember, like, what's your like thesis of the game? Like, it's the exploration, it's the being able to do what you want, the many paths and so on. So I feel like while everything needs a general improvement, you don't want to go too hardcore down one sort of rabbit hole, and then it's all of a sudden Assassin's Creed parkour sort of running around everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Because you don't want to play a mage that's, you know, like, you don't want to feel gimped as a mage character, so you want to walk around like a normal person. But meanwhile, like, you know, the best way to play is climbing that wall and jumping around everywhere. And
I mean, so I guess to sum up, we wouldn't want like any drastic changes, but little things added would be nice. Jasus says, who would win in a fist fight at a Wendy's parking lot at 3 a.m? Mehrunes Dagon, Molag Bal, or Shea Gorath? Also, who'd attended and abstain?
I'm assuming they mean like maybe other Daedric princes who
like
come
what?
and watch.
Just
or something.
watch it.
Look, let's just keep it to the parking lot.
That's
if we go to the actual just the three competitors, I'm gonna just put my money on Mehrunes Dagon. He's literally got 4 arms. Like, I feel like that's a huge advantage in a fist fight. He's literally got 4 fists. Shea Gorath's like this old dude with a walking stick, and Molag Bal is, he's.
I guess the story would probably go though that Shea Gorath wore some magical ring that when he punched Mehrunes Dagon shrunk him to the size of a grape, and then he just stepped on him.
No.
There you go.
It's
done. That's it.
That's cringe, bro. Not based.
It is what it is. It is what it is. What do you think, Drew?
I think, Shea Gorath would need some tricks up his sleeve, like drop a Wendy's milkshake in front of Mehrunes Dagon as he's coming at him, or something like that. He's not going to win in a fair fight.
But it wouldn't be Molag Bal. We can all agree on that.
Imagine such a hot take just going. I'm just thinking back to the questions before. It's like, what piece of like canon or lore would you remove, or whatever it was? And it's like, I'll remove Shea Gorath in his entirety. But yeah, go on.
I guess.
I think Dagon would.
It wouldn't be Molag Bal. No one would pick Molag Bal.
No,
right?
he Molag Bal prefers to pick on people smaller than him. I think is a pretty,
because Mehrunes Dagon can also obviously likes being underdog, ambitious, so on. I
think Dagon would beat Molag Bal in a fist fight. Yeah. All right, Vernon. When the law says the Hist give Argonians their souls, do you think this could be understood as consciousness instead of a metaphysical soul? So when they die, they don't necessarily go back to the Hist, but the Hist have their knowledge and can use it.
So I would go and say it is the soul, but I get what he's getting at here is kind of like functionally the Argonians are like biological automatons that are just kind of connected to the Hist, and then when they die, their knowledge just sort of comes back to the database, and that's the kind of vibe of it. But simply put, like, you can soul trap the Argonians. They sort of seem to have a sentience outside of Black Marsh and so on. I don't think, while I agree that the Hist use them and they're a vehicle for like the Hist, I feel like the soul, they do have a soul and it is important. You know what I mean? Like, they're not just a flesh machine, I think.
Yeah. It is a little weird though, like, because, you know, the idea that they evolved from the ancestor lizard, the size of the soul for the basic lizard would be different to an Argonian, so the soul would in some ways change.
Look, again, you also have to look at gameplay versus lore. Like, the whole idea that there is a lesser, greater, grand, and like stages and levels of soul is gameplay. From a lore perspective, it's kind of contrived and a little bit like, okay, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, this soul has 1,000 points. Like, it's kind of, you know, it's not how it works. So maybe you could run it, but yeah, I don't know.
Anyway,
I'm more inclined to believe they have souls.
Let's move to the randomized assassin. How did FudgeMuppet form? It would be interesting to know how you all started. Thanks. Well, we started in 2013, so Scott and I were still in high school, and we had a friend who was doing YouTube, and he was doing all right, as in like he had like, I don't know, 100 subscribers or something, and we kind of like for fun, like kind of feel like, oh, we can get more than you type thing, and we started, and then we just started making Skyrim builds, and then we just started doing Elder Scrolls content, seeing it was going well. We dropped out of uni after like a year, and then a few years in, Drew came aboard.
Yeah, well, I started. Oh, sorry, you want to take it? You can.
Okay, well, I was just gonna say, because I didn't grow up in Australia. I came out to Australia from England as a teenager, and I didn't know these guys at all until uni. The first class of uni was a compulsory class where you don't get to choose who you sit next to or anything like that. And I happened to be placed next to Scott. And, you know, we got to talking. We both liked Pokemon. We both liked Elder Scrolls. we didn't shut up in class. And then eventually one thing led to another. Yeah, and we were all working together.
Because then I was going to... Because I ended up quitting university halfway to pursue FudgeMuppet full-time in 2015. So then but then come like later 2016 or so on, I think Drew was like nearly done with his degree. But I was like, hey, you know, you were interested in this and like writing and so on. Like, did you want to come aboard? And then he came aboard. And that uni degree.
I got that degree, and now it just gathers dust in the closet and never used it.
I'll tell you what, dropping out was really hard. Not like I wanted to do it, but everyone else in your life, when you're a very young adult and you're like, hey, I'm gonna leave uni to do a YouTube channel about Elder Scrolls, doesn't make me happy. I guess I should also clarify that Scott and I have known each other since we were like, I don't know, 7 years old, and we were playing Oblivion and all that in primary school, but didn't start. It's funny we didn't start YouTube in 2011 when Skyrim came out. It was a 2013 thing.
Yeah.
Well, back in those days, it was a bit more difficult as well, like making builds on an Xbox 360 where you guys had to like get the Ogma Infinium on every character. You couldn't use console commands, stuff like that. It was a slog.
And to be fair, we probably would have been laughed at if we did it 2 years earlier, because we were already heaps young. We were already heaps young, and then it would have been, I would have been, it's just not. No.
Well, yeah, that's that. So, Jacob Backer, what changes do you guys reckon they'll make? Baker. Sorry, what am I thinking of Backer?
Is that from a game?
No, I think there's an author, Scott Backer.
No, it's from a game. Oh.
Okay, there's a Backer anyway. What changes do you guys reckon they'll make to the appearances of races for the new Elder Scrolls, as in Oblivion looking different to the Skyrim version? Love the podcast and you dudes. Keen for more to come. Anyway, look, one thing I guess is I think they will go with a more muted sort of ESO kind of looking elf rather than the kind of more weird hyper angular Skyrim looking elves that they did do. I think Khajiit and Argonians will kind of riff off what Elder Scrolls Online's done so far. Like, I don't think they're going to make any drastic changes to them, but like I think all of the elven races will look a little closer to human, a little bit more, you know, aesthetically pleasing rather than the sort of, you know,
I think the drastic differences you get from Morrowind to Oblivion to Skyrim aren't going to be the same anymore. Because ESO, yeah, they did make some small changes, but for the most part, they were very similar to Skyrim. And I think they've kind of reached the point now where they're not going to change drastically from here.
Yeah.
I feel like that as well. I just hope they don't get inspired by Elder Scrolls Online and make it a bit Warcraft/Disney looking. Like, I like the realer, the more real look. And by the way, Scott, the brain forgets trauma. But you know how I'm saying backers from a game? It's the Nomad clan from
Cyberpunk.
Cyberpunk is starting. I was like, I ran with the backers.
Yeah. Oh, good. Okay.
That's what that was. Game. Anyway, Johnny Ball. A bit of a personal question. How has the Elder Scrolls series affected your individual lives? In brackets, gotten you through hardships, made you feel comfortable with yourself, and so on. P.S. I love you guys so much. It's an interesting question. I guess for all three of us, the main way it's affected our life is it's given us a job. Like, this is our full-time work, so that's really cool. I suppose it hasn't really made me more comfortable with myself. Or gotten me through hardships.
See,
I
for
don't
me,
know about that. For me, it was a lot of fun and just good times.
Necessarily have like a pleasant like high school experience and so on. Like, Skyrim was so cool, like, for me, but like it was probably unhealthy, like the amount of that I played. But like, especially considered to give me anything. But like, for sure, Skyrim and so on. You know, it's like, and Oblivion even before it kind of gives you a cool, like, you know, any service, just like how any escapism kind of is, it helps you in a way. But one thing is actually role playing. I think like my understanding of like characters and stuff got way better role playing in games, because I would deliberately try and like explore other mental states and like be someone else. Like, oh, you're not considering, oh, what would you do? So you sort of stop seeing everything through just your own eyes. But yeah, like
same as cultural understanding as well.
Yeah,
learning Elder Scrolls lore gave me massive, like, would force me to learn a lot about other religions and cultures and societies and kind of put yourself in their shoes.
But like, if I think about it overall, like Elder Scrolls, like going from like where I was in Oblivion, like it's just this cool, fun bonding thing with friends and so on. And like, you know, Skyrim, it was a big piece of exciting part of my life and so on. And then starting FudgeMuppet and so on and making a career out of it. And now I'm like married with 2 kids that's all supported by
that's the main
entirely
thing.
And I work with, you know, my best friends, and it's just like an awesome kind of, do you know what I mean? Like, it's at the end of the day, you can get all mushy, but it's a very like important thing to be grateful for.
We are very lucky. Yeah.
I mean, and it was a lot of work as well at the start, and I suppose in a way, obviously it boosts your confidence when you set out to build something like this that nobody really thinks is possible at the start, or nobody really believes in your career or job as a, you know, real job. And then you pushing and making it, that is obviously a kind of big mental boost in your life and just for personal growth and all that. But as far as the actual Elder Scrolls, well, playing it goes is also a different part of it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, for me, the Elder Scrolls kind of indirectly led me to FudgeMuppet, because I've always been a big reader since I was a kid. But after playing Skyrim back in 2011, so like, you know, 5 years before I'd meet you guys, Skyrim is what got me really into personal writing, to just write like writing fan fiction initially for Skyrim, which eventually led into me world building and writing my own prose outside of FudgeMuppet. And then, you know, that is kind of what got me fairly decent at writing, enough that, you know, when I met Scott, it was like, oh, do you want to help, you know, come and write some scripts and then see how it goes? And then here we are. So it's all kind of circled back. Skyrim kicked things off for me, because I could never do an office job. I don't know how I'd do it. Like working in an accounting firm when I was in high school, it's just like, ugh.
Well, that was one of the biggest motivations. I remember early days, even in 2013, saying to Scott, like, you know, if we don't have to like become some rich people, but if we can make this a job, then we can do this instead of, going your separate ways. Friends stop talking to each other as much as they get older and different things separate them and you end up in some job you don't like. Let's just go and try this and give it the same attention that you would have to give a degree if you finished it anyway. Like the same attention to detail, but give it to YouTube and see how you go.
Yeah, 'cause it is hard to say to people like, oh, like go all in on your dreams if it's something like YouTube, because it's bloody hard to make it in things like this. But at the same time, like never give up on the things you're passionate about, because if we'd done that, then we wouldn't be talking right now.
It's not a good strike rate advice, because it's like you can give that advice to 10 people, one of them is successful and takes it, and then they'll go, yeah, that's the best advice I ever got. But for those 9 other people where it didn't work out exactly how they wanted to or something like that, it's the kind of thing that, because you don't want to give that advice then to people because you feel guilty because you led these 9 people or whatever.
It is tough, like especially doing stuff like this. There are chill periods, but like I just, as an example, like when Fallout 4 came out, we were working, like I remember we did a 35-hour day. Like we literally did 35-hour day and then slept for 5 hours, woke up, you're awake for another 24 hours, asleep for 5 hours. Like it was crazy because we didn't get early copies, especially back then. And we were just absorbing as much of it as we could and kind of viewing this as like, this is a big break and we have to capitalize on this. You've got to do what you got to do. And obviously it was an advantage starting young because you have more time and less responsibility. Anyway, moving on. James, if you guys had to remove one race from the Elder Scrolls, who would it be and why? I suppose I would pick a race that is the least impactful on all the lore.
Well, just there, you just had Toratok. I added this on the list because he replied to James saying, personally, I'd merge the Bretons and the Imperials. And I think ultimately, if you could functionally do that, or like, get rid of one and like feasibly like the Bretons includes Imperials or vice versa.
I would get rid of the Bretons probably.
Yeah,
like,
because
and merge it into a stronger Imperial culture.
Yeah, basically because a lot of their, like at their base anyway, they're all Needics, and then you just basically have Needs who, got rid of their Elven oppressors, the other ones who kind of interbred with them and got a bit of magic flair. But like for the most part, it's a very default kind of structure. I feel like. Yeah.
I suppose one race you could also get rid of as well would be the Orcs, as much as they have really cool lore. That I don't want to get rid of any of the races, but just hear me out. They don't have their own province. Affecting them would affect... Taking them out would remove so many things... Sorry, would not remove a lot of stuff on the timeline.
Only thing there is like the whole like... It's so important, I think, to the metaphysical narrative with like Trinimac and him becoming Malakath and the corrupted Orcs. And then the Orcs, become a... part of the Malakath being a corner of the House of Troubles, because if there's no Orcs, there's basically no Malakath. Like there's no like kind of thing, and also Orsinium's very important to High Rock and Hammerfell's development. Like
but
Gaiden, Shinji, and all of
High
that.
Rock's development's doesn't even exist without the Bretons.
Yeah, but like characters like Gaiden, Shinji, and the Siege of Orsinium, and all these kinds of things
doesn't really exist without the Bretons.
So.
Right?
I think a good...
No, well, but if there were... What I'm saying is if you got rid of Bretons and there were just other Needs, like there was no separate race.
So they were all Imperial.
They're just all like Imperial or Needs, call it the race Needs. But like, I just mean like, I think Orcs add
I was thinking more like if you got rid of the Bretons, that High Rock would be run by Durrani Elves.
Yeah,
that was my original thought.
What I was kind of going is that the Needs and the Durrani are there. The Durrani sort of control them, but they don't interbreed and create this other race. They just sort of lord over Needs.
Yeah, right.
Okay. I guess.
Okay.
Yeah,
but or they could get rid of Argonians because like now I wouldn't even, because then who's gonna harvest the salt rice, so.
Yeah, I mean I just like you had, but I mean if you simply put, if you look back, Orcs weren't even a playable race, right? Was it Arena or Daggerfall? They were just an enemy type, and that worked perfectly fine. I'm not saying that's better than what we have now. I'd prefer all the 10 playable races to stay there, but I mean it worked.
Yeah, but it's just worse for it, I think. I mean, would you rather that be the case? It's like that saying, if you had to remove one race, I'm not picking Orcs.
No, if I had to, I would merge them with Imperials, so long as the Imperials were in High Rock and essentially just replace the Bretons there, like like the Needs, like you were saying, like because then the timeline, taking out High Rock changes a lot more things in the timeline than you think.
Yeah.
like drastically, more so than taking out
I think
Stats Sword.
having them, as we've pretty much said, having them as being two different strains of need, removing all the stuff about them being a half breed, and just kind of double down on the lore that you take the race of the mother or whatever like that, rather than having the half breed that kind of contradicts it. Have them be a different group of Nords because they're both into commerce. And you could just say you pick a need, you can either be an Imperial need or not Breton need, but a High Rock need, and that would probably be the best way to do it without destroying tons of lore.
I know it's just taking the piss, and I love to like just bash on Argonians because it's funny, and like I like to play into it. But it's actually funny if you actually take the Argonians and move them out. Like they're they're probably one of the least important to the actual like Tamriel's history. Like outside of basically, it's just like you're just not going to have the slaves will have to be like Khajiit slaves for the Dunmer or something purely instead of Argonians or something, because if you just remove that and it's just an empty swamp full of dangerous whatever,
just the Hist controlling lizards, but the lizards aren't a playable race,
because then you don't really lose anything, because the Argonians just stick to their realm. They don't really play a big role in everywhere else. But yes, I would anyway. I guess.
But it wasn't remove a playable race. It was remove the whole race.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Order of Talos. Who was Belazar's heir, the third emperor of the Elysian Empire? Belazar is thought to be the first Minotaur, and there's a lot of Minotaurs in present-day Tamriel, implying he was a sex machine. However, the rest of the Elysian emperors, to my knowledge, were Imperial but Dragonborn, suggesting they were in some form related to him. It's been something I've wanted to know for years.
Yeah, well, the unfortunate fact is that we just actually don't know who it was. Like there is this one out of source thing called Amiel. I think it's from it's Matt Grandstaff's post from the Imperial Library, and that's in the year 322, so that's like 100 years after. Less than 100 years. But still, ultimately we just don't know. You would assume that Belazar's kid was kind of maybe a bit bullish looking or something, and that there were other Minotaurs or other. You know what I mean? Like maybe it could even be things like I don't know, like it just kind of got bred out and the Minotaurs became a separate race or so on, because we don't really have any proper canon mention of another emperor until it's Emperor Gorius in 461. So which is basically just shy of 200 years afterwards. So it's plenty of time for multiple generations of emperors and so on. But yeah, it's ultimately we just don't know. But yeah, he must have gotten around a bit to
yeah. All right. Well, unfortunately, you've wanted to know for years, and we failed to answer your question. Jimmy the Freak, if a FudgeMuppet cameo were to happen in a future Elder Rolls game, what would be your roles in that Elder Scrolls game?
I think the best way, like if I was like kind of like unbiased, but I'm like trying to like implement us as.
You'd be like, make me a Daedric prince.
Yeah, but trying to unbiased as like a little Easter egg or something. I think like you could go for like three bards, or like kind of three people. Like you could put us as three characters in a library in the whatever equivalent of the Mages Guild thing.
Kind of like in All in All's video, where it's just like there's a Dremora, a Dunmer, and a Bosma sitting around a table in a tavern having a muted conversation, and you can kind of tell it's us. But it doesn't impact your game at all. It's just a little Easter egg. Would
feel
probably
like
be
that's
the best
way to go about it.
Yeah. I got really hopeful when I was playing Fallout 76 and I found Deathclaw Island, and you go there and there's like three skeletons dead on the floor, and we'd made this video when Fallout 4 was big called Deathclaw Island, which was an island with Deathclaws on it. And it got media attention too. Like they posted that video in like different like Kotaku type things, and like they drew attention to it, but no, it was just it was not.
Next question.
Nevermore.
Yeah.
Someone asked a similar question regarding official lore, but I'm curious, which part of Kirkbride's out of game lore do you each dislike the most? I wouldn't say I particularly hate any of it, but obviously all of the space era stuff just interests me the least, I suppose. But I don't like dislike any of it. Like, I hate.
What makes people dislike it, I guess, is when they try and integrate it. Like if you like
make it canon.
If you just kind of take it as it is, it's like, oh, this is a fun interpretation. some of those kind of ideas, like, you know, even things like Pelennor being a cyborg from a future time kind of thing. Like, I don't even mind those, but there are some bits where it's a little, like, some parts of Coda for sure are a bit odd. But I dislike and hate. We're just positive people, you know. Unless it's the Ebonheart Pact, then you know.
All right. Anything to say, Drew, or shall I move on?
No, I was going to get into the kind of killing light of Pelennor thing as well. That so long as it's not, you know, it's just a reference to the Amulet of Kings as opposed to him being an actual space cyborg. But yeah, it gets pretty wacky.
All right, hello there, XD. If you had to choose between Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind or Oblivion's collection of weapons and armor that could be in the Elder Scrolls 6, what would be your pick?
Assuming like all of the graphics are like brought up to snuff, of course, then Morrowind, I think. Like just with the ordinated armor, the Daedric sort of armor, the glass looks so cool.
But do you think that wouldn't really fit at all?
No, why not? It's just asking which collection would you pick.
Also,
to be the armor collection they use in a High Rock or Hammerfell game, you would choose Morrowind's.
Well, assuming it's High Rock Hammerfell, but I'd rather that could be. I'm assuming it was added, like it's an addition, not like the.
Okay, like
those.
If it's optional things you can craft,
yeah.
Like you go and you're like, I want to craft Morrowind glass, then I would pick.
Like
Morrowind.
most of, like a lot of, I've kind of come like a lot of Oblivion's armor kind of looks a little like. Yeah,
especially the helmets.
Like honestly, like there's some cool ones. Like I mean, you guys, I don't even think you guys like the Orcish one. I kind of like the Orcish from the neck down. But Ebony kind of looks cool from the neck down. You know, there's the classic knight steel looking thing, but like the rest of it's nothing.
Still looks
special.
good in
the
Oblivion.
Daedric's
Morrowind
cool
Daedric
and recognizable.
Is the best.
But yeah, Morrowind Daedric and the Daedric masks and stuff, and obviously things like bone mold and the Ordinator armor. I even prefer the Imperial armor in Morrowind, the bit more of a sort of like Byzantine kind of.
Yeah, we should make videos. I think we should do some armor comparison and weapon comparison videos between the games and talk about which are our favorites in general.
Having a few more armor pieces slots as well is better than just kind of dumbing it down to a few.
Yeah, for sure.
There's even less in Skyrim.
Yeah.
All right, non-dual 13. Out of all the Elder Scrolls games, which one do you think was the most significant in the lore which was introduced?
Significant in what way? Because I feel like Morrowind's lore put Elder Scrolls on the map, as in like this.
But
is
Morrowind,
some crazy
I would even say,
lore.
in terms of the most significant, Morrowind is almost like a soft reboot. It adds dragon breaks, it adds Kim, it adds all of the metaphysical basis of all the.
But in terms of lore
games
that most people actually know about, couldn't you say the Oblivion Crisis was like I mean, it was, but like could be one of the most impactful, crazy events that forever changed the timeline? Like it depends what way are you looking at it, I suppose.
I would just say that overall, like all of the books, simply put, like a lot of the basis, all of these books added in the times of Morrowind, a lot of the lore and all the stuff that fleshed it out, and even the story, like the Empire, the Nords, all the ideas of what everything was. Like,
I just don't, in my head, I don't consider that Morrowind lore, even though it is. Do you know what I mean? Because it's a book that's not like about Morrowind.
Oblivion's lore contributions were pretty shit for the most part because they went back on it. Like obviously you can love the game for
like
all these
with the
different
Imperials
reasons.
And stuff.
Yeah, but with the like they're kind of like there's some parts that are really good, but then some just sort of, you know, not as.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, I would say Morrowind is definitely the one. Even if you don't like the game, like Morrowind is the most significant in terms of lore contribution to the game because it was like a soft tone reboot. Like Daggerfall and the one game and arena before it was sort of like a very pulpy sort of Frank Frazetta sort of typical kind of fantasy sword and sorcery kind of vibe games in a lot of the ways, but like come Skyrim, it's like obviously come Morrowind, they sort of obviously it's like Star Warsy sort of looking right there, but yeah, it was it added a lot of lore, all of your Kim, all of your god bits and pieces, dragon breaks, even though that's contrived. It's all foundational stuff that was built into Morrowind's lore.
All right.
Yeah. Immortal Wolf. What are your thoughts on the relationship between Kinnereth/Kyne and her husband, Lorcan Shaw, and how it ties to the creation of Mundus, her motives for helping the Nords use the Thumb, and her supposed contact with Alesia through visions of Pelennor Whitestrake's arrival, who was a Shazareen?
Kind of reminds me of last podcast.
I would just kind of say that overall kind Kinnereth seems to be very pro Lorcan Shore, and kind of it seems like a more, favorable kind of thing. And I guess even her domain being sort of like nature is kind of dependent on a like mortal realm for it to exist in. But obviously she's seen as the wife of Shore, teaching the Nords Thum and helping out Pelennor and so on. These are all like big groups of men who are basically fighting elves in their respective conflicts and so on. So I guess that's my thoughts on it. I feel like she's just one of the Aedra who are more favorable of creation. Hence, she literally took Shore as a husband, I guess. So,
yeah,
that's my thoughts. Do you guys have anything?
Every major thing they've been involved with has allowed the mortal realm to continue to exist. It's Padmaic.
Yeah.
Okay, Jordan Wiley. Okay, first of all, thank you for the amazing content, guys. You're welcome. My question is, if you could experience from the narrator's point of view a single part of Elder Scrolls lore from start to finish, what would it be and why? Such as the Elysian Slave Rebellion, yeah, it could be that one, or the Battle of Red Mountain.
I think the Battle of Red Mountain shouldn't. It's another one of those same sort of things as the Dwemer.
Just quickly, what does it mean from the narrator's point of view? Like you're experiencing it
I'm assuming they mean
firsthand,
like a more authoritative kind of thing, like as if you were kind of like experiencing.
Yeah, like you have a camera's view on everything happening, and you get all the perspectives. And stuff like
it's not just reading a book telling you about the past, which sort of seems a little bit more unreliable.
So like an omniscient, like
no, yeah, I'm assuming that's what he means. Like that's how I understand his question. But I would say not Red Mountain, because part of the conflict and stuff there is like that's part of its appeal, sort of similar to the Dwemer stuff, and it's somewhat related. But I think honestly, as long as they kept a lot of the mythic elements, the Elysian Slave Rebellion is really cool. Yeah, that
sounds like a really good one.
As terms of a story, if you had from her emancipation from the Aelids all the way up through, her relationship with Morahouse and Pelennor there, and all these amazing things, fighting all of these Sorcerer Kings, so many cool characters. So
I'd go for the convention and watch the conversation about what they're going to do with Lorcan after they defeat him and his armies of men. See all of the gods convening, see Magnus and his Magnagi flee, see the ripping of his heart and the firing it across the sea, and just see everyone's perspective of all the Aedra who would commit to...
What if they're just a bunch of glowing, colourful orbs and they're like really boring?
So they're just all augurs of Dunlane.
Yeah,
but like...
that would be what I would pick. I'd want to be a fly on the wall during that epic debate between gods.
Maybe I would actually pick the Trinamac Boethia incident just to see what actually happened.
You're inside the intestines with him just to see how it all goes down.
I feel like that like the actual convention, I feel like is so like, once again, it's like all of that kind of stuff is so like subjective, and cultures like whatever you saw would.
Narrator,
but then I feel like that kind of kills it, because you go, all of these others are sort of invalid or like not interesting kind of. Whereas, I guess if there's the Trinamac one, the only variations are small, like, exactly how it happened, or did Mephala help stab him? Like, if you saw it actually happen out, it could just be a cool thing to watch.
Alternatively, maybe the destruction of Lig. So, Mehrunes Dagon being created, the Dread Kings and their tyranny, and who these slaves were who destroyed the realm.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, I vibe that one.
All right. Sith Makuta 257. Would you ever consider expanding to Fallout or other RPGs? I know it's called the Elder Scrolls Podcast, but I would like to see you guys cover other games in a similar fashion. So obviously we did heaps of Fallout stuff and other RPG stuff with Witcher, but I suppose in podcast format, we would. I suppose the thing to consider is opportunity cost. And I would say that like the Elder Scrolls Podcast is definitely the focus, but it's still, it does take time. When we also have to make like other videos for the channel. So like in a world where I had all the time in the world, potentially at the moment though, I'm feeling very like focused on the Elder Scrolls Podcast.
It'd have to be something that like we were really, really into, like, because
like insanely passionate about.
So like we all love Fallout, but we could probably cover Fallout's entire lore in this amount of however long the podcast has been going so far. We could probably do it in this amount of time. Whereas Elder Scrolls, we've got endless content.
I feel like you could.
I want it. No, you.
Wait,
Bro.
you know what? Are you saying in all 50 episodes of a
No, I mean in 2 hours.
No, he's saying this episode.
Okay, not 2 hours. But
Look,
like,
obviously in a
I wanted you to say some crazy take, and I got it. I'm glad.
Scott,
glad.
I saw your meme a while ago. And it's just like, it's like Fallout lore, and it's just like the main character saying to the master, "Stop," and he's like, "Okay." And then Elder Scrolls
the other
lore, and
one.
it's just like this weird,
like
extremely
Oh, what's the music on that
Illuminati.
too?
It's I'm pretty
Illuminati
sure
stuff.
it's somebody you used to know,
Didn't
but
know.
like done in a
Yeah,
remix.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
It is.
But yeah, like it would have to be something we're really into. And the other thing is, and this is just obviously the reality of what happens when it becomes your kind of job, is that you need, like, for example, I'm sure there are like book series or other sort of fantasy worlds that aren't nowhere near as popular that you could get enthusiastic about and talk about. But it's not like there's enough space for it on YouTube. Do you know what I mean? Well, not enough space, but there is no space. Like no one would be interested or know what you're talking about when you get a little obscure.
Talking about Lord of the Rings or A Song of Ice and Fire would be amazing, but I assume I think I've seen some, but that stuff is fairly well covered already by people who are as nerdy towards those universes as we are towards this one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Alternative Oats, what is your least favorite retcon? And if you were to introduce a new retcon, what would it be? Congrats on the anniversary and well done on all the hard work. Thank you. I would say I guess I don't know if it kind of covers. I could go like Dragon Cult is technically a retcon, and I could be lazy and use the exact same answer because that's kind of retconned into the history. They added that in Skyrim.
My least favorite
Jungle.
retcon.
yeah, it's
Jungle
a transcription
Cyrodiil.
error.
Yeah, Jungle Cyrodiil. I wish it was actually a jungle in the time of Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. And it was never retconned out of existence. I just think the jungle and all of its culture built around it's way cooler.
Yeah, I feel like for me it would actually be the fact that in Skyrim their pantheon is not like strong. I would make that a lot stronger.
Yeah.
I really don't like that when you go to like Froki's shack. This is the Kine follower, and it's just like, oh, I'm one of the only people in the whole game staying true to the true Nordic pantheon. It's like, I would have rather Skyrim feel way more Nordic than it actually did.
How's this for an answer? My least favorite retcon is that they turned Cyrodiil from a jungle into a thing. What would I introduce as a new retcon? They turn it back into a jungle in Elder Scrolls 6.
Yeah.
But I honestly, that one, I just think there's a lot of cool, like you read about in the Pocket Guide to the Empire, there's so many cool things, like all of these like golden gemmed bridges over the Imperial City, like these big like combination.
Got nothing to do with jungle though.
No, but it's built in the eye, like it's all jungle, and they have like this rice-based economy on the edges, like on the flats of the Nibene and so on, and then they're like transporting
cool.
up and down, and like the jungle is part of the aesthetic. It's a bit wilder, it's crazier. You've got the Aelids with the beads and feathers, and it's like it's a different feel to just medieval Europe.
I think my retcon would be as much as I understand why the devs of ESO did it, and they kind of had to do it. I would make Somerset much more like the description in the Pocket Guide of like this bright glass and insect wings kind of city that's blinding to see, and that would make it feel more like Morrowind feels, because in Morrowind they weren't afraid to make some really bizarre alien looking place. Whereas,
but what if you won't see it though?
So I guess if the Elder Scrolls ever went to Somerset properly in an RPG, in a single player RPG, I'd want it to be alien.
Yeah,
because pretty sure from my memory, in Morrowind, the glass armor that you have in Morrowind, I'm pretty sure is actually supposed to be an Ultima design at the time. Like it's like the kind of idea is that over in the Somerset Isles they have all this crystalline looking armor and stuff, and it's like. Instead, it's just Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's just exactly.
Which, they're cool too. Like, it's nothing. It's just obviously something a little zesty, a little more flavor.
Yeah.
It's, cooler. But yeah, there's plenty of retcons like that you could be like, like a lot of the first Pocket Guides to the Empire, there's a lot of stuff in there that, yeah. Anyway, Cody Bangert, do you guys have plans for another big lore video type essay in the future that's around an hour or so in length? Or do you guys prefer making shorter ones? Either way, love your guys' content. I mean, yeah, there's a bunch. Like, it just depends. You've kind of got to find the ones. Like, sometimes topics only require a shorter video. Like, you don't want to just bloat it for the sake of for just talking for ages on end. But sometimes when it's like, Vivek explained, or like mortality guides, or like
I mean, 36 lessons of Evec would be a big one.
That would be a
that's
massive.
Technically on the table.
There is an Alma Lexi one I actually had a while back, started, and then kind of have to like think about it more, because there's a lot you can do.
Let us know in the comments what big lore essays do you want to see. Give us a topic that would actually go for an hour.
Because as you said, I think most of our 20-minute videos, if we weren't trying to be concise, and like it may not seem like we're being concise all the time, but for the most part we're trying to boil it down to the most important information. Most of them could be an hour long if we just let ourselves go on tangents that are somewhat relevant, things like that, and go into all the detail, but trying to keep it not too long and not too, we don't want anyone to get bored. So
and I think the ones that usually do have that run a lot longer are often things that have a lot of like metaphysical, wrap your head around it, explanations that require like knowledge to build upon, so you can kind of tell them. Whereas if you were just like, do an hour on like Stormcloaks versus Imperials or something, it's like you can, I mean, I'm sure we could, or something, maybe even that, like why the Empire are not the good guys, maybe could even be that long, but it's a little bit more, I guess, like surface level feeling. It's not like philosophical. It's more like discussing like the morality of like, invading a country and killing its people until they submit to you is bad. It's not, do you know what I mean? Like it's not like a galaxy brain take. It's very like, so yeah.
Anyway, about to head out. Are you guys considering switching to an actual studio where all three of you are in the same room, or is it too inconvenient for now? It would be cool to see you guys in a cool studio with props and a nice design while discussing deep mind effing Elder Scrolls lore. Lol. Much love and keep up the amazing content. Well, thank you very much. We have thought about the podcast all being in like one room to begin with, but especially with the Oblivion crisis that was 2020, being all in separate places was actually much better. And in 2019, we also had we actually rented out an office space, but we didn't really vibe it. Like, not having to commute and all working from your own spot at home is actually way better. It
would be good if we had it would be at someone's
the
respective
prop
house with
nice.
all of the props and studio and so on. But with the flu at the moment, like there's all it, that things can change on a dime. It will be okay one day, and then you go back to the old format. So we kind of don't necessarily want to do that yet. But
but I do like the aesthetic idea of it all.
Jason Jackson, if any part of the Elder Scrolls was turned into a movie or show, like the Witcher series or Game of Thrones, which part of the universe would you like to see turned into a 10 out of 10 film or series?
I suppose that's like the Elysian Slave Rebellion question. Just pick that one because we're probably not going to get a game with it.
I think it needs to be animated as well. Wouldn't want it live action.
Yeah,
personally.
I agree, because I think this is why I'm not even a weeb. I don't even really like anime for the sake of anime. Like, because what I'm saying is different. Like, some people really like anime specifically, but like I like animation regardless, because it's just, you can draw your imagination way better than you can actually get someone to look like it, unless you rely on like heaps of CGI, which often becomes expensive or just doesn't look as good as the actual thing. Like an actual good quality animation would be awesome for it. And you see it, it's one thing that's really cool. It's becoming more of a trend, like, the Castlevania series on Netflix or things like that. Like, it's not just becoming, like, I feel like Netflix especially and Western audiences are adopting animation more just for series in general, and people, even viewers, aren't like looking, that's a cartoon. It's like they just watch it as a show. Also, in terms of like the with all of the pandemic stuff going on, it's like it makes more sense that people can draw in offices and so on, and you can just do your voice, and so you don't have to have these big sets and big sets and filming spaces, and travel around the world for scenes and locations.
Also, adaptations scare me. Like, I feel like if something like this were to happen, I'd want as many of the big original minds behind the Elder Scrolls to be a part of it as possible, because both of the examples Jason gave of the Witcher series and Game of Thrones, I like thinking about them make me physically uncomfortable, because I love both of those series. I love A Song of Ice and Fire, And
Wait, you wouldn't like Henry Cavill as the Dragonborn?
No, Henry Cavill's pale on a white streak, and he even brings the same wig, like the white hair. And it's just
both book series are fantastic. The games are great, but like the Witcher show, I despised, and Game of Thrones. The second they didn't have George Martin's work to operate off, it's just like woo, straight downhill. So I'd be scared that Elder Scrolls, nothing would ruin Elder Scrolls. I still love The Witcher. I still love A Song of Ice and Fire, but it'd be nice if you get the original minds involved.
This might be like a weird take on The Witcher, but for some reason I can actually tolerate it. I just treat it as a very different thing. I just treat it as a completely like I don't think it's. I'm not saying I think it's great.
Yeah.
But like I watched the first season and I'm like, oh, it wasn't as bad as I thought. Yeah, I think it depends what expectations you go in. Like when I was reading everyone saying this is the worst thing I have ever seen, 0 out of 10. I'm like, oh, it must be terrible. I'm like, oh, like obviously it's nowhere near as good as the games or the books.
To be honest,
100%,
too,
but like.
The first half of the Witcher series kind of is a bit
it's
like
much worse than the second half. I didn't like all the changing around.
Just watch 5 hours; it gets good after that.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and I agree. I agree.
No, look, I'm being overly cynical, but to me, it feels like more so with The Witcher. It's like you're hiring writers as opposed to people who love the series who are also writers. It felt like they didn't care that much about the worlds they were writing.
I mean, I suppose it's the intention as well that you watch it with. Like I went into it like not feeling serious, and like I could actually laugh at some things that I thought looked bad, but then still
did you guys
enjoy it?
Also, we've got a Fallout TV show coming. Do you remember that's a thing? I forget that's a thing happening, but there's going to be a Fallout TV show at some point.
Honestly, didn't know.
Yeah,
probably saw one of the news channels say something and just chalked it off as a clickbait title or something.
Last one is Tallow Defoe, who says, if you had to be Daedric worshippers, who would you worship?
Azura, I guess. Yeah. Kind of like the same question we had earlier, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless I was an assassin in the Morag Tong, then Mephala. I feel like I'd take that as a second.
But why would you want to be?
I don't know, because then I'm just being an assassin, bro, and then that's it.
Fair. That is
or why do the Dark Brotherhood quest? Like, dude, I don't know. It's just, it's a...
Yeah, I think Azura is the pick.
Yeah.
Plenty to worship.
That brings us to the end of the 52-week special Q&A podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in and for supporting this podcast the whole way. A lot of the comments you leave below really do motivate us and keep it all going. So thank you so much from all of us. Social media links are in the description below. If you want to get some sick FudgeMuppet merch, there's a link there too. And we all look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.
Peace out.